little delayed getting quorum. We'll be getting started, I think, in the next 5 minutes. Stand by.
Troy or Claudia, can you confirm you can hear us?
I can hear you. This is Claudia.
Thank you.
Hey, Rangers, welcome. Are we causing trouble again? Oh, fabulous. We have quorum. It's 7:03. Miranda, can you call, I call the meeting order. Can you give us a roll call, please?
Yes. Mayor Pro Tem Mahold,
Here.
Trustee Baumhofer,
Here.
Trustee Corvalon. Here. And please note for the record that Trustee Coombs Ismail is currently absent but expected to attend, and Trustee Blakemore will be absent for this meeting.
And Trustee Blakemore will be back next week. She sends her regards from Trondheim, Norway. Okay, so this is a single ticket agenda tonight. It's a work session. We're focusing on budget issues because of a lot of things. We're at that point in the year where we have to start thinking about next year, and we have to think about unfunded things we've got this year. Rita, thanks so much for getting the audit done. Well done. That was more difficult than it should be. Tonight let's let you kick it off with the aim for what we're going to be talking about tonight, Miranda.
I'll actually turn it over to Attorney Madsen and Rita Six because they were the ones who drafted it.
Great.
Good evening, members of the Board of Trustees. In your packet tonight was an aim addressing possible tax increases, tax options, revenue increases for statutory towns. As you can see, the aim looked very similar to what you saw last week, with the exception of specific numbers. So sales tax increase, we put in dollar amounts. What if the voters were to approve a 0.25% increase? You'd be looking at $125,000 increase in revenue, 0.5% increase, $250,000 in increased revenue, 1% is $500,000, and 2% would be $1 million. Also was information related to a special marijuana sales tax, and statutory towns have the authority to impose a special tax on retail marijuana sales. If the voters were to approve a 10% tax on retail marijuana sales, a retail marijuana sales tax of 10%, that would be approximately a $230,000 increase to revenues. Also, there was information related to what other municipalities are doing for a retail marijuana tax. And that ranges anywhere from 3% to 10% was the high. You have an option of an excise tax, which is a marijuana excise tax, which goes essentially from the grower to then the marijuana company that makes the products.
Got it.
Or to a retail marijuana store. And the limit on that by state statute is a 5% tax.
Okay.
And then the final option would be a property tax increase. And we evaluated the property tax increase related to an additional 5 mills. And that amounted to approximately 177,000 for an increase. There is some wiggle room for that because the assessment rate is going to be reduced. So as you may know, property tax revenues to the town are the property value times the assessment rate times the mill. And so if the assessment rate is decreased, the town's revenue will be decreased. And the reason the assessment rate has been decreased is the General Assembly, the state has said property values are increasing. And we're worried about people being able to pay their taxes. And so we're going to lower the assessment rate.
But not the mill rate.
No. And so the towns and the taxing authorities, so a municipality, the fire district, schools, they have the authority to set the mills, but they don't have the authority to set the assessment rate.
Oh, that's why it happened that way.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then just to back up a little bit, also in the packet was information related to other tax issues that are going to be before the voters at the November election. So Nederland voters are also going to be asked to vote on 2 Boulder County taxes, which are 0.1% each. And we also think a fire district property tax.
Yeah, they sent out a mailer this week about that
Yeah.
intent.
Neither one of those have actually set their ballot language, so they could change. But that's what we're looking at.
Excellent.
There's a couple of things, well, 2 things that I want to mention that were not in the packet or in the AIM. One is the Fair Campaign Practices Act. So what the Fair Campaign Practices Act says is that a town cannot spend money to urge electors to vote in favor of an issue. So essentially, you can't spend public dollars to ask the voters to support your ballot issue. That kicks in when you've adopted ballot language. So that's not in effect now, and it's not in effect until you adopt the ballot language. That's why you see a lot of public entities, the county and the fire district, they've been doing a lot of public outreach in terms of their ballot questions because they haven't adopted ballot language. So just note that right now is a time to be doing public outreach if you are interested in considering adopting ballot language.
You can do public outreach that doesn't cost money, like flyers or something.
So also using this facility is considered using public money.
Oh.
Using a town meeting is public money.
Okay.
Right,
Yeah.
but we're not, I mean,
We're not there
get
yet.
public input. That's not urging anybody to do
Not,
anything.
and we're fine right now. So,
but even when we adopted ballot language, if we solicit public input on that,
well, how do you,
Like a survey,
yeah.
no, you cannot do that.
so the survey has to come out before.
So it's nothing to do with urging people whether or not to vote for.
Yeah, it's spending
It's
money related to an election.
I want to offer clarification though, that obviously there's an independent thing happening right now that person, that group that's now formed on
Right.
Facebook, that they could do it on their own, but it
Right.
can't be involving town resources, personnel, those types of things.
Well, and on your own, you can. I mean, there's nothing, you have First Amendment rights. You can go out there once you've adopted ballot language and you can urge people to vote on you're on your own time. You can't in a meeting. You can't really talk about it in a meeting. Yeah, so you're limited in what you can do after you adopt ballot language.
Okay, that brings up a good question. Let's start to walk backwards from the November election to the statutory dates that we're going to have to face and when we have to have language prepared.
So you have to have language prepared by September 9th.
Okay?
And there are 3 board meetings between now and then.
Oh, wow. We
You
have
can
so much.
also hold you could have a special meeting.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are just your 3 regular meetings between now and then.
Okay. How, this is addressed to Attorney Madsen. How much time is going to be required to craft language? Is this cut and paste or is this?
So it's based on requirements from Tabor. I mean,
Sure.
Tabor sets the requirements.
Okay,
So it's not cut and paste, but it is pretty formulaic.
okay.
I could get draft language to you by next week.
Let's do that.
Once we have draft language, that doesn't mean that the Fair Campaign Practices Act kicks in. It's only when you adopt it. So, and one other thing that I did want to mention that wasn't in the aim is that one thing to consider is in drafting your ballot language, do you want to have the money, the revenue earmarked towards any specific area? And it can be earmarked in such a way where it would be a specific department,
Or a specific fund.
a specific fund,
Mhm.
and or other town purposes. So that you would have flexibility in using that revenue.
Okay,
But it also signals to voters, this is our intent. We want to use it for this purpose. But again, you would have flexibility.
okay. That's good. Is there any, okay, so the main reason we would do that is earmark it is to signal intent and make it clear.
Yeah, and when the Nederland residents passed the occupation tax, that money was, or that question was earmarked and the money was earmarked.
And I think that same fund might be appropriate for this.
It could be, yeah,
That we do have a Health and Human Services Fund.
and
The
or
police
law
department falls
enforcement.
under Human Services.
Well, and it
and law
was
enforcement,
and or law
law
enforcement.
Yeah.
And so that's from the STR tax, though.
Correct.
From this tax, we can allocate it however we want. We can allocate it however we want year on year, right?
And
Each budget.
that's an important point is that, there is the question that you ask the voters, and that's what you're going to be limited to. So the question that you ask the voters, and then related to the STR tax, the occupation tax on lodging, you each year can set the percentages that go to the Health and Human Services Fund and the percent that goes to law enforcement. So you can change that for the occupation tax, those percentages. But what you ask the voters, you can't change unless you go back to the voters.
That's fair.
Right.
Let's go back to Rita 6 for a second. We just finished our audit. Let's set the stage as to where we're at with our budget year to date, especially with the general fund.
Good evening, everyone. So as far as the budget goes, so when we look at our June financials, obviously every fund is doing great. We're higher than expected in every fund. And the general fund, I apologize, I forgot my laptop. But I think, if I remember correctly, you came by this morning, what we budgeted for the general fund was a loss of 75,000 for the year. And as of June, we're at 80,000 increase. So,
Plus.
oh, that's
Yeah.
correct. So overall, $150,000 plus.
Is that because of the understaffing that we've had
Salaries,
all across the board?
the big one, less, and then also sales tax is about, I think it was like 10% higher than we budgeted.
Okay.
So that's truly the main reason is personnel in the general fund. Okay. And we were saying earlier, as far as what Attorney Mattson was mentioning, so when we talk about the sales tax, or, yeah, excuse me, the language we're going to use, remember, yes, PD is part of the general fund, right? We have a lot of other departments that are a part of the general fund. So if we were to generalize that, right, the language, we could probably use it for other departments if need be.
Great.
So, yeah, the PD is just obviously a small portion of the general fund.
So relatively healthy year to date, not hemorrhaging,
Correct.
but we're with some, as every business has right now, some expenses that we didn't
And
anticipate.
as I was explaining to you this morning, when we look at line items in the general fund, which you guys don't get to see, okay, so maybe we're a little bit off here, but then we're like in wages, we're saving money. What's important for us as a town, DOLA, DOLA, when we file our audit, what they look at is they look at each fund as a whole. In other words, if we budgeted, let's just say 3 million for expenditures for the general fund, all they care about is did we go above that or not? End of story.
Right.
However, when I look at the financials each month, I look at each line item and, oh, okay, why is this so high? If it's $100, I don't care. If it's 20,000 above, I'm going to go talk to the department head and say what's happening. Other than, of course, we know this year, fuel, gas, supplies, all that stuff. At some point, probably as of June, we're okay. But at some point, it's probably going to look like we're way over, right? And that's why we're discussing some supplemental budget items that we may present to you in the next couple of weeks.
I can hardly wait.
We're doing actually quite okay.
Yeah, I think I was delighted, number one, that you got the audit done. And number two, to find our mid-year position isn't as bad as I would imagine it's healthy. And I really appreciate you're looking at the big items because they're the ones that count.
That's exactly right.
Going around the board, are there questions at this point before we move on from Rita and then move from where we're at to where we're going?
I have a question about the property tax increase. If we were to, I didn't quite follow, how much could we generate by, like, were we thinking like a mill levy or were we thinking just rate, is that how we do it?
It's done by increasing the mill levy.
Right.
So right now, let's see, the town's mill is at 17.274. And so you would ask the voters for an increase in the mill levy amount. And that we thought we just used 5.
Yeah.
And that's about 177,000.
Okay.
And like I said, that number is probably going to be a little bit less because of the assessment rate.
Yeah.
Lower.
Yeah, that's part of, okay, gotcha. So it sounds like we could get where we need with sales tax maybe.
That looks like that would be the most revenue, right?
Right.
I mean, if we had 3 things, people might get a little frustrated seeing that much on there.
Right.
So,
I agree.
Well, and sales tax also puts,
a burden on everybody.
and also out of towners, right? Who
Yeah.
who are using Nederland as a stopping point or services or buying from us. And
From a procedural standpoint, if we were going to do all 3 of the 4 or whatever, do we have to do a separate measure to the voters for each one?
Yeah.
You don't have to. You can do one. but then it's all or nothing.
Right.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I mean, I could see some people supporting the marijuana tax, but not the sales tax or
Yeah.
vice
For the
versa.
property tax in particular.
there's an issue if you do several questions. If you pose several questions to the voters, there could be a lot of confusion. You know, what is this, what does all this stuff mean? Why is Netherland asking for so many increases in taxes? So you'd have to do, you know, some really good explanations as to why it would be,
Without being able to explain it.
yeah.
Well, you could on the ballot question,
Nobody,
if we were being specific.
I'm just going to disagree with this.
Yeah.
We put the language on the ballot. We make it clear. We don't need to sugarcoat questions to voters. They either have the intelligence to figure out their town's imploding or they don't.
Yeah, I mean, people read ballot questions. I do.
Yeah, though we have seen those ballot questions and they are like,
They're very
sometimes
confusing.
they
It's
feel like gibberish.
Double
Yeah.
negatives or whatever.
Then we can provide a blue book, but
Yeah.
let's not try to sugarcoat this, guys.
No, we don't want to hide these taxes. We want to make it very, I think, at least I would like to see it be very, very open, very, very obvious. And I would also like to see the money allocated because I think it has more chance of passing personally if it's allocated rather than just going into the general fund as kind of potential slush money for other departments. I don't think we should do that.
I'm going to disagree with that as well.
Okay.
Fundamentally, the problem we're running into, we're here because of a crisis with one department, but fundamentally, this is a macro issue. This is a result of Town of Nederland kicking the can down the road for the better part of 20 years, and there's no damn can left to kick. The wheels have fallen off the bus, and right now, the crisis is your police department. You know what's going to follow right after it is utilities department. Then it's going to be the building department. And then it's going to be your entire town staff. Fundamentally, we do not pay our town staff enough for the work they do. And all they take is 15 minutes down the road this way, half an hour down the road that way, and they're making $20,000, $30,000 more. So this isn't a matter of let's raise sales taxes so we can keep a police department. This is a matter of what, Rita, how much of our current budget is funded by grants versus total town budget is funded by grants versus sustainable income sources?
Budgeted about, was it 2 million?
1.9,
Yes.
What's our total budget?
4.2.
That's almost half our budget funded by unsustainable revenue sources. You cannot expect to run a town and continue to do this. We have for 15, 20 plus years. We've tried to run a police department for 10 years, and we have 3 chiefs now who have told us you still don't have an actual police department. You still need to build it. Right now, they're begging for money to try to just keep it functioning, and it's not functioning.
Yeah.
So the writing's on the wall. This is not an issue
offense.
of, it is.
Functioning.
You're doing a great job. What I'm trying to get across to this board is this is not an issue of we're raising sales taxes and we're going for revenue to try to save one department. This is we need to actually have a sustainable revenue source and act like a actual town. Towns are run like businesses. A business shouldn't have over half their budget allocated through asking for grants that you have to jump through hoops. And we spend how much town staff time running after these grants? We have the ability to do paid parking. We have the ability to raise sales tax. I think that real estate tax is a bad idea. I would agree with that because Boulder County is already way too high, but we can redevelop. We can actually start to pay attention to our revenue sources, and we can say no to subsidizing solar panels on homes for folks that can afford to put a $45,000 solar panel on their house.
But I guess my question is, if we are raising money just generally, like and putting it into the general fund, can we can't put in the ballot language then that this is for law enforcement, right?
No, and you don't. You simply put in the ballot language. In 5 years, you won't have a town unless we start making money as a town. I'm sorry, the writing's
Yeah,
on the wall.
I'm-
This is the first step.
Yeah, I'm worried about messaging on that.
Sorry, I think the messaging is very clear. You cannot afford to continue to run a town. Look at our roads, look at our police department, look at the condition, and look at the fact of our employees. They all are making far less than they should, and they're here because they love the town.
And they're getting poached.
They are
Yeah,
getting
they're
poached.
No.
And we've spent the last 10 years training everyone else around us. This is a joke. It's time to stop talking about the police department, and it's time to start talking about increasing the town's budget and revenue so that we're not here debating how to split up dollars into cents when they're asking for millions.
Yeah.
Miranda, I want to bring up one point because we're talking about police department and salaries in general. Let's talk about pay parity. Explain what we should know about pay parity across departments.
Well, I think generally, so we were going to come to you next week with a compensation study. So I think across the board, we are dramatically underpaid in comparison to our neighbors. And you just mentioned, we did have an employee who literally got poached in his office to come work elsewhere for $10 more an hour than what he's making. And so I think that's our challenge, is that what we're seeing here is not specific, unfortunately, to the police department. I mean, really is across the board. And I do worry that we have that crisis. We just pulled utilities back from the brink of disaster. We now have the police department. When is it streets? When is it parks? When is it the community center? I do worry that those things are coming.
But in that case, then I think we have to raise it more than just the amount that the PD needs.
Well, right, I'm
Right.
looking at the.
My
sales
argument
tax.
is we raise sales taxes 6%, if not 6.5. I
Wait.
don't want to push when
Wait,
it
wait,
parks
wait,
in.
Let's not get ahead of
wait,
ourselves, but you're about to say,
6% on top of what we have?
No,
so it's
no,
16%?
no. You're
we're
not
gonna
allowed
get to that in a second.
Okay.
Okay, because I'm looking at just the
We
graph
raise it
here.
to 2%.
If we owe the full amount to get $1 million.
I have a
So-
question for Attorney Madsen.
Go ahead.
If it does go on to, if it doesn't go to general fund and it is earmarked for police, what happens if the police department
Implodes.
is not able to get people in and we're in the same boat? That money then disappears or what? Because that would be my concern for the board.
Well, my recommendation for the ballot language would be, if you want to earmark it, to have it earmarked and then have and/or other town services.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
then we're covered.
that's reasonable. Okay, in terms of process tonight, so that we can, let's see if we can get it done in a couple hours. I don't know if we can. But we've got a number, I want to go through step by step each of these options. And at the tail end of tonight, I'd like to have a decision and a directive on what we're asking town staff to do. Make sense, Miranda? Okay, should we, do we want to, where do we want to start? Do we want to start in terms of, well, it's pretty much laid out for us, isn't it?
Extra copy of that or no?
Here, you can have mine.
Oh, are you
That's
sure?
Yeah,
You've got it memorized?
I do now.
Pass it. Just tell me you want it.
Miranda, where do we, get us started, in
No,
terms
this
of,
is all your notes.
no, that's my wife's notes.
She had to
I
go
know where she stands.
Okay.
Wait a minute, who's running?
Well, are you wanting to talk each? Are you wanting to talk each tax and go through each tax?
That's my intention.
So I think it would make sense to start with the marijuana tax. I think that personally, I don't find that controversial. I think more often than not, you're going to pass that on to visitors. Those are typically the people who are visiting our marijuana department, our retail stores. And it's it makes sense for us to have it. It's kind of shocking that we don't in comparison
Right.
to all of our neighbors. And so I would recommend, as staff, I would recommend pursuing that tax, but would love to kick that off as your first one.
Okay, since we're on that, we'll start with marijuana tax. Set the stage, tell us a little background, what surrounding communities are doing for those that are listening in. And I don't know that you're gonna have a recommendation, but help us set
Yeah.
the plate.
So I guess I can just speak to Nederland itself. So Nederland does not have a retail marijuana tax. So what this is a tax on top of regular sales tax. So under sales tax, between the four marijuana establishments, we bring in 125,000, which is great. But if you were to add in an additional percentage, we could dramatically increase that amount. So neighbors around us are anywhere from 3 to 7%. And Attorney Madsen, I think you put in here, what did you put in here as our, trying to get to it? 10% for a return. I'm trying to find it. What page am I on? Do you have it in front of you?
233,000.
Thank you. So that, I mean, that's a huge jump and would be, in I think a fair way to increase our revenue stream. Again, it's really passed on to the users, people who are choosing to go to these different establishments. And then, obviously currently there is that limitation that we'd have no more than 4 locations. If that were to change, that is also an opportunity. You're obviously trading one for the other. You're allowing more retail establishments, but I just think even the 4 we have is a pretty significant
Yeah, if you
revenue
add
stream.
more, you're just diluting it in different, I mean, the demand won't change per se, in my opinion, but.
Looking around the room, I don't see any marijuana shop owners here tonight. How would you argue it from their perspective?
I can add something to
Yeah.
that. So right now, retail marijuana is taxed at, it would be taxed at 8.95%, which is the tax rate in town, which is Nederland tax, state tax, Boulder County, and the RTD.
Right.
And then there is a 15% sales tax that's a state tax on top of retail marijuana.
Oh.
The town gets 10% of that
The state gets 90.
15 and the state gets 90. So we already we've budgeted for 35,000.
Oh, we don't get 10% of the 15, we get 10% of the total.
Yes.
I got you.
Yes.
We're budgeted at 35,000 for this year, and we're pretty much there, so.
Every town gets that.
Right.
Ones that charge tax on top.
Gotcha.
So then if you were to impose a 10% tax, I mean, that means the purchaser of retail marijuana is being taxed at 8.95, 15, and 10.
So almost.
So that's a lot of money. I mean, that's a lot of tax.
Yeah, and I guess looking at it as a buyer, I guess there's a point at which you say, I'm going to go to the black market.
Or I may go to Longmont.
Yeah.
3 versus.
Yeah,
10.
yeah.
I guess I would say though, so, and sorry, it took me a minute to find it, you know, we currently have establishments that operate in some of these municipalities that are listed. So for example, you know, you look at, you know, these 6% municipal taxes, for a few of those current establishments, they're already used to applying that because they already operate in these other industries. I think it's your local ones which really we don't have. All of our marijuana establishments operate somewhere else. And so they're used to seeing this tax. It's not just that they're Netherlands specific. They all have additional locations.
Okay, that's a good point. Yeah, I'm just thinking about Agati. They've got 9 outlets, right? And they're taxed at different rates in every place.
Right.
Right.
But I don't know that if I were coming to Ned to Agati, that I'd jump in the car and go somewhere else to save a few bucks.
No.
So board, what do you think?
Well, I think we should definitely put it on the ballot. The question is, do we do it at 5, 8, or 10? And I would say, personally, I'd say 8.
Is that a decision we got to make tonight?
It's one of them.
Or rate? No,
Ma'am.
I mean, there's the if and then there's the how much.
Yeah. I mean,
Well, that number can be changed very easily.
until we approve the, like,
Yes.
we can change it
Yeah.
the day we
Yeah.
approve the ballot language, right? So,
Yeah.
And that's it's coming up in roughly 3 weeks, so be thinking about it.
well, 3 meetings, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's 3 meetings, yeah. But lately it's been 3 weeks equals 3 meetings. But I think I'm hearing unanimity. That's the beauty of a smaller board. That this is something worth looking at. And I think we're going to sum it up at the end, but I think I'm hearing that we'd like this one to be one that we're comfortable moving forward with.
Yeah, I mean, this is completely anecdotal, but I've often remarked to other folks that I'm going to wait to come up to Ned to buy something because it's cheaper,
Yeah, that's a good.
you know? And it's
Very
like,
ironic.
it really shouldn't be.
Right.
And I address this to those of you that have been on previous boards. Have we ever really looked at this seriously?
No, I think there was some confusion about that 35,000 that we get. That was, oh yeah, we are taxing marijuana, not
We're getting
actually
the 10% already.
correct,
Yeah.
and not realizing that no, we hadn't actually done this. So this to me is a no-brainer. We should have been doing this for the last, 15, 20 years in this town. It's
more than a
not a
decade.
huge amount of money, but we don't have to get into the percentages now, but I'd just say they did provide us with, you got Buena Vista here at 5, Carbondale 5, Central City 5%, Federal Heights, Lafayette are 10%, and really Manitou Springs is 10%. I would say recreational wise for the folks who pass through here, we're akin to Manitou Spring. We are a gateway to a lot of different recreational areas, wilderness areas, and those areas. So like Tom said, nobody's going to freak out about 10% who's coming to Ned to recreate. They're just going to go buy it in the store and go, oh, it's the mountains. Your locals might freak out, but let's be honest, most locals go down to Boulder anyway to shop, and that's why we have a problem.
And how many of us ever look at our sales tax receipt and say, oh my God, look at that tax rate?
I don't think most people actually understand how tax rates work. They just pay it because it's what comes across on the check. And that's kind of what we're all doing right now. I mean, we're at 9% inflation. 90% of this country lives check to check. Let's get practical. Let's look at the big picture, have an event horizon, actually get ahead of something so we're not constantly sitting here as a board, as I have been for 4 years, handling crisis after crisis with no hope of ever not having a crisis as a town. You got to address the big problems and stop band-aiding little solutions. So I would like the discussion tonight to be big problems. We don't have a big enough budget to run a town. Why are we trying? And that should be the ballot language, is your town needs to have a bigger budget or you're not going to have a town. Boulder County controls our land use. That's why we tried to go into the IGA. That turned into a massive conundrum, where we were yelled at by citizens that we were trying to annex things for money. Maybe we just need to come out and say, yeah, we can't run the town with the budget we have because we don't tax you, we don't tax marijuana, and we don't develop paid parking. Is there a town anywhere on the Front Range that doesn't have paid parking? There's not. You look at the surveys, 90% of the Front Range believes it's absurd to expect to pull up to a restaurant, park in front of it, and go and eat dinner.
That's August 16th, Jonathan. We'll get-
Sorry, it's part of the big picture.
Yeah. Okay, but and I think it's going to be a part of the solution, but that's another discussion. I think we took the easy one first.
I was gonna say, I might just throw another easy one at you just to discuss is the occupational tax. So there is an opportunity if you wanted to increase the way in which we charge short-term rentals. So there's a short-term rental occupational tax, and then there's also another occupational tax for operating a business within. So I don't know if you want to split them apart and take occupational tax for short-term rentals first, but that's currently charged at $2 per night per room.
One of my first questions when reading through that was why we do a flat dollar amount as opposed to a rate. Was there a reason at the time that we chose that?
Yeah, because you're a statutory town, your taxing options are really sales and use tax, occupation tax, and property tax.
Okay.
You can't do a lodging tax per se. And a lodging tax is what a home rule municipality does. And that is a percentage of the rental. So
Yeah. So as we discussed in the last meeting, there's a lot of advantages to home rule. There's a lot of hassle to get there. But the real estate transfer tax and all those things are home rule issues that we're not entitled to right now. But that explains why it's a flat rate.
correct.
Okay. Okay, so that's established. Board, what do you think?
Who's currently overseeing?
The town clerk department oversees this, and I do want to just offer clarification. It's a self-reported tax. So we're able to, in essence, establish how many rentals someone's had within a quarter, but they're going to need to report obviously how many bedrooms were occupied. We're not in the house to be able to assess that for them. So we know the minimum that would need to be paid, and then then the SDR owner would go from there.
And am I correct? Code compliance is no longer employed to enforce STR. That is now on town clerk.
Correct. We found that no one called our 24/7 hotline, and so we canceled that service in order to decrease the contract amount.
A point of order, Miranda, before we go further, my intention tonight, and let me know if you disagree with me, is we're going to open things to public comment. Do we want to go through all this now and then bring it up to public comment as one? at the
Yeah.
end?
I think so.
That's more efficient.
Okay, let's do it.
And then just see that also that you wanted public comment focused solely on taxes and possible revenue sources, correct?
Precisely, yeah.
I have a question. So right now it's $2 per bedroom. And so a 3-bedroom home could say that they only rented 1 bedroom out of the 3 bed. Why don't we just, when they apply for their license and they say how many bedrooms it is, we tax it at the maximum amount of bedrooms?
So the way in which the ordinance reads is $2 per night per room occupied.
Right.
Why don't we just
And
say that
so-
they occupied?
I'm gonna look to Attorney Madsen for that.
Taper.
Yeah, that's probably the language that was passed
Yeah.
by the voters.
So we can amend,
We could, yep, this would be the opportunity to change that.
because, I mean, just to avoid, And that's just, I was thinking that, because I've stayed at short-term rentals and, you pack every room in with many people, a family per room usually. So I think it would be weird to think that someone's going to rent a 3-bedroom home and only stay in 1 bedroom. It's just another way to get more money. But we could also just double or triple that rate. Then you don't have to worry so much about people telling the truth because you have it written down when they apply for their license what the bedroom is.
Rent is purely speculative, but how close to the truth are we getting from self-reporting?
I think
knows?
pretty close. I mean, in the time that we've been doing this, there's only one time that we had to contact an owner for paying less than what we calculated that their base minimum should be.
Okay.
Typically, it's well above, which leads us to believe that they are in fact calculating by rooms. The ones that are like 1 bedroom, it's obviously right on. So generally, I would say we don't have an issue with inaccurate reporting. It's just the challenge is we don't have a way of, unfortunately, confirming that. We just
Okay.
have a way of getting kind of the baseline of what we know we should be getting.
And how many, I know that we started with a much higher number of registrants than we currently have and that are currently paying in. How many paying homes, ADUs do we have right now?
Do you want just the ADUs or the short-term rentals? Because we're
Both.
all broken up by
Okay.
type. So currently, as of July, sorry, let me do some quick calculations. We have 37 short-term rentals and they span amongst 4 different license types.
37.
Mhm.
Okay. And what's, of the 37, how do they rank?
So there's 13 that are primary residence host present, which means they can rent all year long.
Yeah.
12 that are primary resident host not present, so they can rent 180 days. 7, which are Class B, and those can rent for 45 days a year. And then 5 are Class C, which means they're in the central business district, general, commercial, or industrial, and they can rent all year long.
Okay. And what's our total revenue right now, Rita? Okay. Okay. Okay, so it's not a lot of money right now. So Tanya's idea seems to make sense. If you,
Well, except it's a whole nother step.
right. But if I mean, if I don't know if unilaterally, if people are just saying 1 bedroom right now, but there might be some ornaments left on the tree to shake. I don't know.
Or is it easier just to add $2, make them pay $4 a room?
Might be. But from your experience, you've seen these things come in. There's not a lot of transactions, are there?
No, I mean, so we have a remittance form and a calculation spreadsheet that some use, some don't. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say, we're also not seeing like steady rentals when we go to run these, they usually have a handful a month, especially the all year long rentals. You're not seeing like consistent rentals. So it's definitely not like an earth shattering bucket. And, obviously limitations, we still have a lot of people who call who want to be able to do secondary homes here, and that's a license that's no longer allowed. And so most people who are registering now are doing it because they have some sort of bedroom or they want to rent as their primary home, but they leave half the year and they want to rent under that license.
Given the gap, the funding gap that we've got, this doesn't seem to me like it's going to be a place to make much money.
It also seems a potential confusing factor as well as a controversial factor because STR was so, heated
Poor Dallas Martin felt that heat,
when that happened.
or Dallas
But
Masters.
Masters, yeah. But yeah, so it's interesting to have a way to collect more accurately on STRs. I'm not so sure I'm that interested in raising that particular rate for this particular purpose because it's going to bridge so little of the gap.
And it doesn't solve much of the problem, and it's got a backlash potential.
Yeah.
Does that have to be a ballot issue? Was it originally a ballot issue?
Yes,
It was.
And also just for your information, you might be curious to know that in 2009, the town asked voters for a $10 per day occupation tax and that failed.
That defines the envelope, doesn't it?
2000.
It was 2009.
Okay.
I mean, yeah.
Okay.
You could buy a loaf of bread with $10 back then.
Yeah. Yeah. Now you get a quart of milk. Okay. So board, what do you think we ought to do on this one?
Well, I mean, I hear what Eric's saying about overloading with too many choices and people are just going to be like, no, 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 no. But maybe in the future, because I feel like that's a kind of like marijuana, it's kind of a luxury tax, you know, people vacationing and whatnot. And it doesn't really matter probably for them, $6 more a day than what they're, usually that's not a factor so much. But, so I could go either way on it. And we would, if we doubled it, we're only going to make $35,000 extra, which, I mean, it's not nothing, but.
You pick up a lot of public comment at these meetings going forward too. Okay. So what are we deciding?
My thought would be, when it comes to the STR, the occupational tax, there's not that much money in it. If it's going to be, we're going to be reopening this issue.
Right.
Reopening the ballot language. There are folks in the STR community that would like to reopen this issue.
Yeah.
So I think we punt this down the road until they reopen the issue. They want to reopen it because they want 120 days, not the 60.
Right.
At that point, if we gave them the 120, this
Right.
would be worthwhile to look at as a potential revenue source. Right now, it's too much time, town staff time.
Yep.
Doesn't fill any gap until that entire ordinance is changed to make it a moneymaker.
I agree. Others?
Sounds reasonable.
Okay. Should we move on?
And so the other option is an occupational tax, which is a tax imposed on the privilege of operating a business or practicing an occupation within town. Attorney Madsen, are there specific business types or is it? I was going to pull up how many businesses we have. Just
I mean, you could do it on specific business types. That's what you've done with the short-term rental. Occupation tax is it's on motels, hotels, and short-term rental owners. So you could have it on a specific business type, or just on every business in town.
Oh, no.
that operates in town or has a brick and mortar in town.
That operates in town.
So I think that just, so there's 215 business licenses that are active right now. That's going to obviously be a combination of your brick and mortars and people conducting business in the town of Nederland. Stays pretty consistent at that level. So that's how many we currently license annually.
I mean, we already charge people a license annually.
Correct. We charge businesses a license of $50 with a $50 renewal and contractors $100 with a $100 renewal.
Okay. And what about those of us that work for businesses located elsewhere that work from home? Are we subject to that?
So there is a home-based occupation license. I'd have to pull up the definition of that. I don't know if they would be
The people
subject
that
to
work from home wouldn't be, it just depends on how you write the occupation tax. Like the city of Denver taxes each business and then taxes each employee. And, the idea is that you use municipal services as a business and an employee. And so you should be paying taxes for those municipal services that you use.
I found out the hard way once when I checked the wrong box on my weekly time report, and I got a $5 charge from the city of Denver instead of, because I said Colorado or Denver instead of Colorado. But I don't think it's going to be my point of view. I don't think it's going to be a meaningful amount of money, and I don't think that it's going to go over real well. And I don't think it's going to be self-reported real well either. What do you all think?
I mean, I just feel like it's a bad look to charge people to go to work,
Yeah.
Even if yeah,
just in general.
yeah. And I'd rather have them work from Salto or New Moon than going down the hill because they're going to get taxed for working at home.
Well, the New Moon would be the one getting taxed for every employee they have then is kind of what they do in Denver, you're saying?
No, I'm saying me technically, if I lived in Denver, work from home, I'd be charged $5 a month out of my paycheck for having worked from home
Wow.
in the city of Denver.
It's not much money, but
No, it's not, and I'll never make that mistake again. And if I lived in Denver, well, I'm sure I would self-report the Scouts Honor, but I don't think it's a good revenue source.
no. I mean, you said you could limit it to just motels, hotels, and short-term rentals?
That's what we've already done.
Oh, that's what we've already done.
Right.
Yeah.
So this would be
I
just
I'd say
expanded
leave,
to
I
other
don't think so.
businesses.
That seems,
And from my experience, it's not only it was $5.75 coming out of the employee's paycheck. The employer then also had to match it with $4.
Yeah.
So,
feels like a headache is what that sounds like.
$500 and up.
Right.
That's what it is in Denver.
Yeah. I don't think this is a solution to our gap. Anybody disagree?
Definitely don't disagree. All our business owners have just the hardest time getting employees as our town does. So very bad move.
Okay. Are we in alignment that we can move on?
I mean, I do think that the
Okay.
business community should step up and help with this particular issue in potentially other ways. But this, I don't think, is the way.
I agree.
Oh,
with
that's
that.
that's a topic coming up soon.
Yeah, and I guess your next one is sales tax.
Let's
I'll
move
throw that
on.
one your way.
Yeah.
So in the AIM, Attorney Madsen and Rita Six had provided, based on 0.25, 0.5, 1%, 2%, and how that span breaks down. So I'll turn it over to you. I guess one thing I would say, just as town staff and just some of the conversation I've had, I would encourage, if this is a route you're interested in, is to obviously talk to the DDA and have them provide a little pulse of how their businesses are feeling about an increase, because it would primarily hit those businesses within the district, and I think it would be important to hear from them.
Barb Hart, are you comfortable commenting for the DDA?
Will you come up, Barb?
Coming up.
I think we can definitely do that with the DDA, get a pulse of the community on what the sales tax is. I think as a business that charges sales tax, one business does, one business doesn't of ours, it would be very hard for us to collect sales tax from anyone else. Higher, Boulder County is one of the highest in the state, other than Fraser and Winter Park. And asking the businesses to collect more is basically saying, don't come shop with us. We're already paying super high sales tax rates. People can go buy a guitar somewhere else for less. They can buy it online for less. What we're giving them a personal service, at some point, they're just going to say, we're not going to go to Nederland and shop. So at some point, you have to realize that you can't tax the businesses who are barely surviving up here. Many
Right.
of us are barely surviving up here. But I'd be happy to do a poll among the DDA. Most of the people on the DDA don't have retail businesses. So I'd be happy to send out a poll to the shopping center and ask them what their thoughts are. I'm not sure that they're going to feel that much different about it.
When town has a business listserv that we use, that we disseminate information through. So of course, if that was of interest, we could ask the community that has business licenses how they would respond. But I do think that's important that it's not only the increase for town, but recognizing the impact on businesses themselves.
Yeah, Barb, how much room do we have to maneuver rate-wise? What's your sense as a business owner?
Rate-wise,
Yeah.
we're at 8.975 right now. Highest in the state is 11.2. That's Fraser and Winter Park. So you don't have a lot of wiggle room.
We're getting close.
You're getting close, and you are already competing against businesses that are not brick and mortars and are not paying a huge overhead. I think you want to figure out a way to raise some money from the businesses in the community. Find the ones that are not registered as businesses. Find the businesses having other businesses coming in and register them. You've got markets and other things that have one business license but 60 vendors. Are they registered, every one of them, to come here? No.
How would we do that?
Miranda?
Yeah, so I share with Barb that obviously the clerk's department is one person. And so unfortunately, a lot of this is complaint based. When we learn about something, then we we contact that owner and get them registered. But we are definitely chasing a lot of things more so than being proactive. And that is due primarily to staffing and staffing limitations.
Good. Thanks, Barbara. I think what I'm hearing is we need to be aware of rate sensitivity, that we got a narrow window to work within. We have the luxury of having a limited number of businesses in town, and we can survey them fairly easily and get some guidance on where what kind of envelope we have to work within. So I would, sound me out if anybody disagrees, but I think we should explore it as an option in terms of language. But we need some feedback on sensitivity, and we need to get that fairly soon. It's a significant amount of money in the sales tax if we get it right to filling our gap. And I think it's worth looking at, but I don't want to cripple our businesses. I want more businesses to say this is a good place to locate. And I want to be supportive. And so does anybody have something to say or disagree?
Yeah, I agree. I think adding the full 2% that we have here would be just too much. But if we did the 0.5, we could get what we need for the police department. Start. Maybe we do need to look at property tax too. I don't know. If we're looking to really fund
That's next.
town.
Okay.
But yeah, I hear Barb. Yeah, people might not, I mean, they're probably still going to buy the food and the beer, but they might not buy the guitar. The
Yeah,
high
fixed
ticket
spending
item.
gets buried.
Yeah.
But a guitar is something
It's a
different.
$200, $300 item, as you really feel it then. And we don't want that to happen, but
That's a fine line of question because I really do hear that and I do understand that. But at the same time, I feel like those who come out to shop at a place like Brightwood are there for the kind of intimate feeling there, knowing who's building their guitar, knowing all of these things. And really, when you look at studies for all businesses, the argument is, oh, if you increase our taxes, people aren't going to shop. Studies show the opposite. Studies show that if you charge an extra $2, $3 for grass-fed beef, people gladly pay it. It's people are changing in how they function these days too. They are shopping based upon their morals and their ideals. We have a fundamental fact that those who can't afford to shop in Ned already go to Boulder. And as a town, we say, let's not raise our sales taxes because it might drive more people away. Reality is we make all our money from our sales tax off of our bars and our liquor stores. Just look at the budget. So not raising our sales tax because we might harm one local business that really does a great job because they are awesome people and do great work. You are basically throwing the baby out with the bathwater, saying, well, we might harm two businesses, and you're blindly throwing away all the money that you're going to make off of drinks in the bars and alcohol stores because nobody at the bar is going to pay attention to the fact that their beer is an extra 2% more. Nope. So I like those arguments, but this is where I say, as a board, you need to grow up and look at reality. Sorry, that's a mean way of saying it, but.
In the end, taxes have perverse incentives, and sometimes you can turn into a town of nothing but bars and restaurants if you're not careful.
We are a town of restaurants and bars
We have-
and marijuana stores. And all of the stores that we have been here through recession. They're here, they're established, and they have customers that specifically come because they're niche stores. We shouldn't worry about harming niche stores with an increase in sales tax. And there's great articles about this from 4 years ago when Estes did it. There's great articles now from the business owners that were against it in Estes that went, actually, cool, the paid parking, all this stuff that came out of it is beneficial to us now. So town of Nederland gets so scared of change, and it looks for all the bad, and it focuses on all the potential negatives, and it has a blind eye toward the obvious positives.
Good point.
I mean,
Eric?
it does seem to me that the positives outweigh the negatives on this on this particular point. I don't think that many people are going down to Boulder because it's cheaper. I don't think it's cheaper in Boulder. I think they're going out of Boulder because there's more choices and there's more selection.
Yeah.
But I think that people are probably shopping online because it's cheaper, not going out of Boulder because it's
it's
cheaper.
easier.
You know,
I'd love,
and this would count for online purchases
yeah,
as well, and that's huge.
yeah.
And that's where a lot of that revenue is going to come from. And, you know, it's one of those things where it's like, well, if people are going to buy online and not go to their local, you know, whatever it is store, won't single any business out in particular, but like if they're going to buy it online, they're probably going to do that anyway. And we might as well be making more revenue off of it, right? As a town, so that we can fund the services that we want to provide to our residents, including our businesses, right? So to me, the trade-off is clear. The benefits far outweigh the negatives here.
Okay. We're going to need to decide on a rate. We don't have to do that now, but I think we're in alignment. This is a way to fill our gap. Just philosophically, I think Brightwood Music and town and businesses like that are I think one of the things that I love to take my visitors in to see.
Absolutely.
It's pretty remarkable that if you want to get a small violin, you don't just get one, but you have three choices. I can't find that in Boulder, or I can't find that really in the Front Range, and it's pretty special. I'd like to find a lot more Brightwood musics to attract to this town. It sounds like we're in alignment to pursue the language. We still are going to, as we get closer, we're going to need to, I think we've already mapped out the budget implications and the amount of gap we can fill based on percentage, and we're going to need to make these percentage decisions pretty quickly. But I think we're in alignment. This is a route.
If I could ask, so with an occupational tax, an occupational use tax, we can target specific types of activities, right?
Yes.
We cannot do that with a sales tax. Is that correct?
Well, you can with the retail marijuana.
Right.
What are you looking at?
Like if you, let's just say you wanted to tax bars, restaurants, and online purchases specifically.
That's a good question.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I mean, the marijuana sales tax is something that's specified in
Right.
state statute. My gut is telling me, yes, you could.
Okay.
But one of the other problems with a statutory town is that the Department of Revenue, the Colorado Department of Revenue collects
Right.
Netherlands tax. So I don't know if there would be a disconnect with that.
Yeah, I don't know where that would be on the form.
Right. I mean,
What maybe they would add it, like, are you a restaurant? Check here.
I mean, if Denver can figure out to charge Tom $5 for logging on to his work computer, like I figure,
well, I mean, that's coming out of, that's a
Right,
deduction on
right.
his paycheck. So,
It
but
was
I guess
self-declared.
my question basically is if it's possible and if we can look into whether or not something like that is possible.
yeah.
My gut was that it's not, but if it is, I think it's something worth considering.
Potentially, I'd be worried about singling any business out. Yes, bars, restaurants, but it's not like restaurants aren't struggling right now. If you've noticed, every restaurant in town has increased their menu cost at
Oh, yes,
least
for sure.
once or twice. That's limiting their visitation,
Yeah.
which further limits our tax revenue.
Though
So let's not single
there are
out.
still lines.
There are still
to
lines,
get
and
in,
there always
you know?
will be. But if it's across the board,
Yeah.
there's no argument of that's not fair.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've been on this board long enough to know that
Indeed.
that's not fair argument is usually what we are debating, not actual. But
Just want to know what all the options actually are. Because
Yeah.
if we don't, then we can't make. the
As I
best decision.
understand, the mechanics would be, Miranda, they declare, or they declare what type of business they are on their form. And then I presume the next step is it gets plugged into their cash registers, and the cash registers divvy cash up. That goes to the Department of Revenue, and that's how it comes back to us, right?
Well, it's a human being, not the cash register.
But at the point of transaction, the tax gets collected.
Yes.
And then at the end of the day, when they tally it up, it's broken down and it's reported that way.
Yeah.
Right. And so that we're going to receive our sales tax check from the state because
Right.
the state's going to divvy it up based on the percentage that we have broken down.
Okay. Okay, so board, it sounds like, are we in alignment on this one? That we think this is a place we can fill the gap?
Yes.
Okay. So, and we need some survey information on how much latitude we've got to move. But it looks like just when you look at the numbers, they're pretty attractive.
Well, yeah, even at the 5%, we can get enough to fund the police department what they need.
Yeah,
Or
let's
0.5,
not,
0.5.
let's remember the rest of the team.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, can we move on, Miranda?
I guess my only question is, did you want to survey the businesses or would you just like to invite them to come give comment?
Let's have DDA take a look at it because or what do you think?
Well, I was going to say that the listserv is not public. And so if we were to release it, it would become from town. Because our listserv is going to be all encompassing where the DDA would do their district. Barb sharing, for those of you who can't hear, that she could do it through the Keep It Local. I mean, it's up to you. I mean, just the access of contacts is going to be different.
We need to collect as much data as relevant as possible, and we need to do it fairly quickly.
So I think we could team together and make sure it reaches both networks.
I would say that's,
Okay.
is that our directive board?
It'd be nice to have the businesses provide what they think would be a reasonable rate their business could accommodate without being afraid of losing customers.
Right, which, I mean, the answer.
It
to
might be
that-
zero,
no, it
but-
might be zero,
And
yeah.
that's fine.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's good information.
Okay. And I just want to apologize to those that are online. We appear to be having video issues again. So you're just looking at a black screen and I cannot fix it right now. So I do apologize and we'll keep working on that. It was working. All right. Your last one is property tax. Also
Did we
information.
skip over
Did I skip one?
marijuana excise tax?
What's that?
That's the tax from a cultivation.
Oh,
Right.
yeah. Okay. So, and Attorney Matz and I talked about this today. You don't really have that here. So we have 3 cultivation licenses, excuse me, 2. Only one is going to be operating, but isn't even operating now. We don't know what the Bakery Brothers output is going to look like. Harvest House is not currently doing cultivation, and Flower Collective moved theirs. I just don't see that it's, personally, my recommendation would be not to pursue that because it would be targeting just the one business.
Right. Gotcha.
I agree. Okay, we're making tracks. It's 8:05. Can we take a 5-minute break for those that need it?
Yes, please.
Okay, fair enough. 5-minute break. It's 8:07. We'll reconvene in 5 minutes.
So
And on an exciting note, I think I fixed the video. So
Awesome. That's great.
good thing we had a break.
That's great.
Okay, so your last one is property tax. Again, all the information is in the AIM. I think there, as Attorney Madsen had noted, there are a few things to take into consideration that, you know, you have Boulder County and the fire department who would be looking to tax property as well. And so again, haven't released ballot language. That's not a for certain, but it is something to take into consideration. You potentially are looking at 4 other.
What is Boulder County asking?
Boulder County is, oh, you go.
Boulder County is actually asking for a sales tax increase.
Oh, all
thank
across the
you.
board.
Right, but essentially they're asking 2 questions, 0.1% for each of those questions. One of them relates to, I believe, funding countywide wildfire mitigation and sales tax for emergency response.
Oh.
So, and both of those are only 0.1%.
Okay.
And then the fire district is asking for, we think, a mill levy increase.
And what exactly, like, what are the parameters of our fire district?
The district, what's
Yeah,
the,
the taxable district.
I
It's
don't
bigger than the
know
city.
that.
Very-
Well, yeah, but is it like Ridge to Magnolia?
Essentially the library district.
Uh-huh.
So
So, I mean, we could create another district if we wanted to, I guess, for
For
public
what?
service or police or.
Well, we can't create a district.
special
The
districts
Citizen
are,
initiative would
yeah.
have to
Oh,
do
it's a
it.
citizen
Yeah.
initiative.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not
We
about-
can't establish
it's
district
about-
outside of town boundaries. We don't have jurisdiction as a board.
I didn't know that.
they have to work with a town, a municipality, or the county. Generally, special districts in this county would work with county commissioners. You'd have to have a board of 7. You would have to have bylaws.
That's why the library has a board.
Yeah,
That's why the fire district has a board.
they do. They
Okay,
all do.
I get you then. So
Yeah.
no.
And they operate just like us, like
Yeah. So,
independently from us.
okay. So I didn't know that. Thank you.
Okay, so each of you has read the packet and knows the parameters, roughly what can be raised. It's significant. It's not insignificant. But Brenda, one of the first questions I'd have is what's the last time that we changed the mill levy on real estate?
Attorney Madsen, do you have that breakdown? don't have it pulled up.
I actually don't, I'm not seeing that it was done. It hasn't been done since 1993.
Yeah.
I mean, as far as I can tell, and that's from information that Colorado Municipal League has gathered. So I don't know how accurate
Okay.
their records are.
Is that just for town of Nederland?
Yes.
How many times has Boulder County increased?
Right.
It's more, as a former Boulder City resident. One of the questions I addressed to you, Rita, these taxes go up over time with property appreciation, to a lesser degree than the property actually appreciates. But over time, looking backwards, for the last 3 years, how much has been raised through this tax for the town? Mm-hmm.
So for 2022, so 14,000?
Mm-hmm. So relatively small amount of our total budget. Relatively.
And it's assessed every 2 years, right? So it doesn't change.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Eric brings up a point. If it's assessed every 2 years, even if we change the mill levy, how long would it be before we saw revenue? We saw revenue because it's in arrears for starters, and number 2, it's every other year. Right? Okay.
Yeah, they pay it every year. It's just reassessed on the value of the
Okay.
tax is reassessed every 2 years, right? Not every year.
about the value of the property is reassessed every 2 years or the assessment rate? So you have the property value that the assessor places.
Right.
All right.
And then you have the state's assessment rate.
Right.
Which is currently at 7.15, but they're reducing that down to 6.95.
Okay.
And then they multiply that by the mills.
Right.
All right. And
So I don't know, Rita, do you know when we would see an increase in the mills?
cash flow.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, it
that's-
might be next, I don't know if that would be next
Could
year.
be with this year, I'd have to look. I'm not sure. Yeah.
Okay, that's pretty material in terms of how useful it's going to be to us. Board, what do you think?
About the property tax?
Mhm.
I don't know. I think we should just stick with the first two, the marijuana and the sales tax, but I mean, if we're really trying to fund this town, we need every avenue. Maybe, we go.
If we propose a property tax, because that's all we're doing, we're not taxing anybody. We're proposing a tax. Residents tax themselves by voting for it. Because we keep talking this language that we're the ones taxing, but really everyone is taxing themselves here. That's how it's really working. I'm not opposed to seeing a property tax on the ballot. I wouldn't want it to be paired with the sales tax.
On
If
the
I
same
did.
ballot measure.
Agreed.
I wouldn't want to see it on the same ballot measure. I am interested to know how Nederland residents, especially property owners, feel about contributing basically more to funding town services in general. I'm interested to know to measure the temperature on that in our town.
Sure.
Putting it on the ballot seems like an opportunity for us to do that in a very real and material way. But I wouldn't want to see it coupled with the sales tax and the marijuana tax, because then I think we risk losing them all.
I think you're right. It's a risk. It's a real risk.
Yeah, I think they each have to be separate.
Going round robin, how would each of you, if you're going to rank the measures we've talked about tonight in terms of attractiveness? You first, Eric, how would you go?
Marijuana sales,
Okay,
and then a distant third is property.
okay. And I didn't hear anything about occupancy, so that.
Not interested.
Non-starter. Okay, Tanya?
Yeah, same.
Okay. Jonathan?
I'm gonna say sales tax. I mean, fundamentally, yes, the marijuana is the easiest. It's what Nederland always does. Grab the low-hanging fruit. It's also fundamentally not worth that much.
No, I don't think, I'm not that interested in doing marijuana without the sales tax. To me, they're coupled. Like,
Well,
it has to
it's
be
a
both.
big amount though, wasn't it? Like a couple 100,000?
If we go to the full 10%.
Yeah.
So I like what you had to say about measuring the temperature through the ballot language of property tax, but I guess where I come in with property taxes, we do have an aging in place population here that's already experiencing
Yep.
amazing runaway inflation, and that is one of their most, stat line items. When you're retired and your property tax all of a sudden goes well beyond what you have budgeted for, you don't really have the ability to take on another job. So I would worry about if that ended up in the language, you might actually have folks moving to town, many of whom I've talked to that would say, yeah, we'd love to pay more in property taxes. So I guess my question is, what is the senior tax exemption?
Oh, is that a possibility?
Well, it's called out here, the senior tax exemption property tax. What is that? Do we have the ability to change that? Do we have the ability to limit how much we tax seniors who own homes here and are aging in place?
That would be me.
It'd be really cool.
That would be a lot of people.
Attorney Madsen,
Oh, you guys are asking some good questions tonight.
Good.
So that's a state tax exemption. So I believe that the senior would have to apply, or maybe it's a county. It looks like it's a county exemption because I just Googled senior tax exemption, Colorado, and it's just coming up with each of the counties. So I'm guessing the senior resident applies to the county for that exemption. It
Oh, maybe they
says-
show income or whatnot.
Yeah, let me just see if I
That
can
seems
find
reasonable.
Boulder.
yeah, I think it's a way to
Yeah.
protect that population.
If we can protect that population, I am interested in property tax because it is not, it's a chunk of change. And I think that people are willing to pay for this town a lot more than we think right now sitting on this board. And I think the sentiment around town is not, don't charge us more. That might come from some folks, but I think the sentiment around town is, why the hell aren't you charging us more?
That's what I'm hearing as well.
And I talked with the state demographer about 2 months ago about where the census data comes in. And it's shifted. I think for the most part, fixed income seniors have already found this is a hard place to live. And oxygen wise, there's not enough of that either. And so, the median income reflects that, and so on, and so do the age skew. So I think that we got to wait to protect them. What else are on people's mind when it comes to this tax?
Let's go for it.
So we're directing to craft language, and then I think the research has been done thanks to you two to get what other towns are doing, what will be raised. And there's one 900-pound gorilla that's not on our docket tonight, and that's paid parking. That's going to be in August, but that in my calculations could raise $250,000 pretty simply. Okay, but that's in the background. That's not for tonight.
It's good to know. If all these fail, we'll have that.
Okay.
Though I do think that we need to be pretty serious about how we're phrasing ballot language measures and like what we're saying Nederland needs it for.
Mm-hmm.
And I hear what Trustee Baumhofer is saying, right? That there is a larger picture here that the PD is a symptom of.
Mm-hmm.
And to some extent, I think that could be represented in this ballot language. But at the same time, I do think that people have trouble voting yes to paying money when it's not clear how it's going to be used. So I think we do need to have some way of articulating what exactly the problem is in that ballot language.
Is that proper, Attorney Mattson, to lay things out like that? Now, say we don't get too specific about where it goes. I mean, is it appropriate in ballot language typically to provide reasoning? That's not what I've seen. I've seen stuff I can't read for reasons I don't understand.
I mean, the language really is pretty formulaic.
Mhm.
You know, there isn't a lot of room for marketing and sales.
Right.
I mean,
But we can list the things that this money would pay for in some way, and that list could be fairly broad, but it could be ranked in the sort of priority order in a way, right?
well, you could earmark it, which is what we did for the occupation tax. So you could earmark it, and so that's listing the things that you're intending to use the money for, and then you could say and or other town services.
Right. So we can list those things and then say and or other town services at the end. What I'm saying is the listing of the things I think is very important.
Should we list them all
Right.
the same?
Like rather than just saying because town is broke, we need to raise taxes. I think we could list like the kinds of things that they'll be getting for this, right? So we can say law enforcement, utilities, infrastructure. We can say these
We
things.
need to upgrade our wastewater treatment plant.
Right.
If we don't do that, you have a building moratorium currently. How much is our building department bringing in revenue? We don't up,
This is more than usually get, Rita.
I mean, but I think this is presented as a basically big picture of, I mean, we have a master infrastructure plan. We all looked at that last year, right? We have the capital improvement plan.
Parking plan.
We have, well, I'm talking about the things that we know we need money on, capital improvement plan, master infrastructure plan. We have kicked those things so far down the road right now, but the fact is like, I think in those plans, upgrading wastewater treatment plant was anticipated for 2024, it needs to happen next year. And if it doesn't, we're in a building moratorium. We go into a building moratorium, the building department is no longer bringing in revenue. Boom, there goes even more town staff funding. There goes even more salaries.
Yeah. No, but I think the way that we word it though is just important, right? Like I don't think we can word it as in just like it's all burning. You know,
No,
vote for
no.
this.
But I think what you can do is you can clearly show, look, here's your town budget.
Yeah.
Here's your inflation. Here's the national big picture. We've always existed here, and you can show essentially the amount of retention in our staff.
Uh-huh.
If you were to trend that and you were to put that on a chart, you could see that the amount we've been trying to increase
Yeah.
our town budget and how much
Right.
we're not retaining staff.
Right.
I mean, we can show this clearly. Can you put it all in the ballot language? I don't think
No,
so.
not all that.
I would depend on talks going around town, the fact we have the owner of our local paper here, other reporters here. I would depend on people actually talking.
No, for sure.
I'm tired of trying to spoon feed people, save your town. It's put it out there, let them choose. That's where I'm at.
I wish more of you were up for reelection. I have to get out and talk to people.
I mean, so it seems to me that we could do the thing that was done for STRs, right? And kind of list out like human services and law enforcement, comma, critical infrastructure, comma, like, you know, town staffing, comma, and other town services, right? So to sort of just write like to someone who is just not paying attention, right? To someone who really is not checked into town politics, who sees this on their ballot, who are going to say like, oh, I want these things. Like, I want the town to have these things. I will vote for this sales tax. Do you know what I mean? Like that is what I'm hoping for.
Fixing the potholes.
Right. I mean, maybe too specific, but like, yeah.
Miranda,
Okay.
We already
We'll work on that.
did that with the sales tax increase was meant for public works,
Yeah.
fixing the potholes.
And then does this pass in a resolution, a ballot language?
Yes,
So the resolution can have whereas statements.
yes.
And so all those whereas statements can be these things, right? Of like what the town needs.
Yeah.
When you're in a voting booth or like voting, how
sure.
I mean, I would assume you're going to read the whole thing, but
But
I would be afraid of
At
putting
least it's out there.
too much there.
At least it's out there on a piece of paper somewhere and people can refer to it, even citizen initiatives.
It's a mail thing,
that
right?
might be like working towards, you
All
know,
for
they'll
it.
have some language, then we can provide it in clear terms that it's coming from the town and their elected officials rather than kind of just hearsay and word of mouth. I would like to articulate it as well as we possibly can is all I'm saying.
Miranda, these ballots in November, when's the election day and when would ballots go out? And is it mail? It's all mail in, right?
Yeah, it's all mail-in and the election is November 8th.
And ballots would go out when?
This is a coordinated election, so Boulder County Elections Office would handle the distribution of ballots, and I don't know what their election calendar is.
Okay.
But do you have that, Attorney Madsen?
I'm looking at it. I think it might be between September 24th and October 7th.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we have to shut our traps effectively when the language is set.
Yeah.
And that's going to be in 3 weeks.
Well,
Well, it could be Tuesday, September 6th, because the ballot language doesn't need to be submitted until the 9th.
Yeah.
So we don't have a lot of time if we're going to talk this one up.
that's correct. One thing that you can do, so one exception of the Fair Campaign Practices Act is that after you pass ballot language, you can adopt a resolution in support of the ballot language that you've adopted. And you can put that on your website. You can use the resolution in any way that you would use another resolution.
Okay.
Now,
like
could,
that.
like the certain departments, like the police department, can they post something saying that they support this? We support only a citizen could do that, a citizen.
Yeah, because they would be using town
Oh, because they're from town.
resources.
Now, the fire department's not town, so they could say, we support the ballot measures. I mean, I'm saying if they wanted to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah,
anyway,
Okay, so we're
moving on.
moving on. We're at roughly 8:30. We haven't taken any public comment yet. Board, are you ready for that?
Yes.
Miranda, do we have somebody with their hand up yet?
Not yet, but we also have people in the room, if anyone in the room is interested in public comment.
Come on up, Chris.
As a Nederland resident for 39 years. Chris Bray, 339 Sunrise Lane, Black Hawk, Colorado now. I moved out in May. I've always seen, the time that I was mayor, I ran a town like a business, and like my business. And if you have $1,000, you can't spend 1,200. You spend 8 and you keep 2. I've seen out of control spending ever since I left out of office in 06. And your police department is one very vital thing that you need for town. And if you lose the police department and you lose your public works because it can't be funded because of past out of control spending, the town goes down the tubes. This is happening on a worldwide scale now, not only in Nederland. So what you have to do is look at where are we spending all this money and where can things be cut? I would sit down when I was mayor and go into all the businesses and see how they were doing and see what they wanted. Even if I didn't like the business owner, I still went in there and said hello. I see no real continuity between the town people and your town government and your town staff. And you need that. And once you lose that, it's gone. So what you have to do now is look at not only the picture of, hey, let's tag it onto marijuana tax. It works in finite amounts. You need to control where the money is going, that we have 1.2 million, then we're not spending 1.2 million. And then if the police department needs something, there's a cushion there for them to have something. If Parks and Rec needs something, they can have something. If Public Works needs to fix roads, they can have something. Without any reserves, you have nothing. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Much appreciated. Who wants to speak next?
Claudia Schaffler.
Okay, Claudia?
Hello, can you hear me okay?
We do.
Okay, perfect. I really, really appreciate everything that's being said tonight, and I am particularly supportive of Eric and Jonathan's thoughts, mainly because I appreciate the logic they apply to it. I just don't want us to lose sight of the fact that we still are in a crisis with Ned PD, and I would love to know at some point what the plan is to keep them afloat until all of these big decisions are made, because that won't be till November. So that's pretty much it from me tonight.
Thanks, Claudia. You're absolutely right.
Kathleen Chipai, and I did have to, I believe, mute your phone, so *6 to unmute.
Kathleen Chipai, 19-year business owner, 31-year resident of East Magnolia. I thought that the STR tax money was allocated to human services, so I don't think that should be in the discussion. That doesn't really help with infrastructure like we need. I'm a big no on the occupational tax. And when it comes to retail sales tax, people have to come to terms with Nederland is a tourist town, and it's best to take other people's money, okay, that don't live in our town, to capture it in our town and then to spend it. And business owners, we charge the customer for the tax. We're not paying the tax. Yes, it sucks that our taxes are already so high, but I think the least amount of impact will occur to residents and business owners if the retail sales tax is considered. The 0.5% seems fine to me. I don't like tax, but the reality is if you want to exist as a town, you're going to need to raise some money. I can't stand, when it comes to the pot tax, I just can't stand the attacks. What ends up happening is cannabis businesses were the guinea pig on how the government could take advantage of businesses. And in order to have one of those businesses started in 2010, you had to sign your power of attorney over to the Colorado Department of Revenue. You had to put a $50,000 non-refundable application fee when they didn't even have language to structure the business. Now, everybody that's in this business right now is a wealthy person. So I don't have problem taxing the cannabis people, but I also can't stand that once the government gets away with abusing cannabis businesses, as they have since inception in 2010 in Colorado with this House Bill 101284, that it hasn't been, that wasn't fair, but that got rid of all ma and pa's that were making any money, including myself, and I closed in principle and sued the state over it on behalf of everybody. And of course, the courts are worthless and corrupt also. So we didn't even, you know, just like in the recall lawsuit, the residents were told they didn't have standing. Okay, how that happens, I don't even know. But I do support, and I will say on the ballot title language, that I believe you have to watch for single subject ballot title, and you can't go a little crazy. Maybe you can on the tax. I don't think so, but I would keep that in mind. And I also think that bombarding people with a lot of different taxes isn't going to get many of them passed. So I think you need to be concise about what's going on. That's my public comment. And I don't like having to raise retail sales tax, but as a business owner, reality is we're not paying it. The businesses are not paying it. If you don't collect retail sales tax and you do pay it out of pocket, you're not very intelligent business owner. So that'll be it.
Thanks, Kathleen. Stay on for a second if you would.
Okay.
Board, we've got a real live retail business owner on the line. Do you want to ask anything, any clarifying questions?
I had a question about what she was saying about single ballot something where you should be careful
Single
how you
subject
phrase
ballot
it.
title.
Yeah, what does that mean?
Well, you're only allowed to have one subject in the ballot title. So when you say we're going to charge a tax, and I don't know how the language is because that's not a law I've studied, but I do know that it exists. And I don't think you can like say it's going to go to this and then this and then this and then some in the general fund. It has to be specific, and I believe the single subject ballot title applies here. And just so Eric understands also, the whereases will be in the language, but not on the ballot. So people will never see whereases or any of that. That's not what's in a ballot title.
Thanks, Kathleen. Anybody else? Thanks a bunch, Kathleen. It's good to have the perspective of somebody on First Street that's in the retail business. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Come on up, officer.
My name is Captain Didio Monsivais. I'm the officer responsible for covering this part of the state. We have 16 counties and about 20 municipalities. Netherlands is one of them. So we work with a lot of very small towns. So the situation is not exclusive of Netherlands. We see this in Hoxton, in Severance, Eaton, all many small towns. It's just that you don't have a lot of population over here. We love coming here. I've been coming here for 8 years. And all of the rangers, they come here on demand. But we cannot be your police department, right? We would like to offer help as much as we can. But we are spread thin throughout the state. So although we love to come here, this is beating a dead horse, right? But this is not sustainable. And she cannot be working 14 hours a day, every single day. Otherwise, next time that you call us, we'll come to pick it up. So my thoughts.
Thank you.
Very much appreciate it. Thank you. Who else would like to speak?
Don Baumhover.
Don Baumhover, go ahead.
Don Baumhover, Nederland resident. So first I would like to speak to the mail-in ballot issue. And so though everyone has to vote through a mail-in ballot, we will have a voter polling service center run by Boulder County open at the community center on Monday and Tuesday. So the Monday prior to official election day and Tuesday. I'm not looking at a calendar right now, can run to one, but somebody grabs that date for me. That agreement is in place. So if you prefer to cast a ballot in person, you could come to the community center on Monday or Tuesday on election day and put on this issue. If you're not registered to vote, I believe Boulder County has a way to register you at a site. So that's point number one. Thank you to Kathleen for pointing out that it is correct that the marijuana retail industry has borne the brunt of crazy taxes and figuring out all the laws on the fly that people have imposed on them. To the other side of that coin is the out-of-town users, especially from states where marijuana is not legal, are happy to pay whatever tax. They don't like all discussed. They don't even look. They just pay it. They're not going to go somewhere else and go, oh, that sales tax is too high. I think that's a no-brainer that we're not taxing that one. Agree with you all that we just need to grow up as a town and just say, you know, we're not collecting enough money to sustain ourselves. And that's just the reality, and the mentality around that is changing. And I also agree with Eric that this was community center. We called it out. This is specifically what it goes for. These are the parameters. These are the limitations, and people overwhelmingly and gratefully supported that tax. So that's all I have to say about that. And thank you so much for the discussion tonight.
Thank you, Don.
I have to offer an apology. I'm new to this timer thing. So sorry, Don, I did not start it, but
I think she was over.
I think you were within your 3 minutes, but I started it for others.
Board, any clarifying questions before Don signs off? Don, thanks very much. Very thoughtful. It's good to know the voters have a place to come.
They sure can. 7 to 7 on election day, and I think I want to say it's 8 to 6 on Monday without looking at the actual agreement with Boulder County.
Terrific.
And of course, the drop box also will be open probably, I think that's 2 weeks before the election. That would be Macy and Miranda can clarify that for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Miranda, who else do we have?
Andrew D.
Andrew, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Andrew Dewart here. No, just a great meeting, and I agree with so much of the sentiment that we definitely need to be getting sustainable revenue, and I wish I had more ideas on how to get more revenue right now, other than what was talked about right at this meeting. But I think the sentiment of putting it out there because us as locals know that, at least I hope most people know what a dire state the town finances are in, and would be happy to vote for and support tax increases. So just thank you for your service and your time, and good meeting. That's what I wanted to share.
Thanks, Andrew. I'll come to yours now. Good. Who else is in line, Miranda?
There's no one else online. Is anyone in the room?
Okay.
And actually, just really quick, call in user *6 if you're trying to speak and we cannot hear you.
Let's give it a few seconds. Anybody out there? Okay. Let's summarize then what I heard tonight. We understand that, number one, Rita, our finances up to date are in pretty good shape, that we're facing increasing costs that if we don't meet them are unsustainable. We're having to deal with inflation, especially wage inflation, and we've got gaps that we're going to need to deal with responsibly. And we got limited ways to do it. And I think we've laid them out. And thanks to you two, for you three, for pulling our options together was super helpful to, number one, know what's possible and the limits of what we can do. We know our schedule and what we have to do. I think the directive I'm hearing tonight is to, we laid out 3 specific sources, right, that we want ballot language to begin to be crafted on, right? Are we in alignment there? We said sales tax, sales tax,
The marijuana retail tax.
marijuana retail, and are we saying we want language on property tax?
I'd like to see language.
I think so.
Okay.
I'm not committing to vote for it, but
Right.
I'll see language.
But yeah, I think we need to keep the train moving if we're going to hit the deadlines that we're talking about. Board, are there any other things you want to say tonight? This was a special purpose meeting. We had to stay fairly focused, and we have a really good shot at finishing by my goal.
Aren't we going to talk about how to fund the police department or what
No,
to do next?
not
That's
tonight.
this meeting?
No.
When's that meeting?
We're working on future meetings right now, but I made the decision tonight to keep this single purpose, and that was revenue sources.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that, but
Yeah, I have to develop more data before I can come back to you and talk realistically about what that budget is going to look like. And we're looking at, number one, a supplemental to get through the rest of the year, and number two, a 2023 figure. And we don't have that data at this point.
well, what are we doing in the meantime to really find Levin of these hours that she's working? Just piecemealing it with Rangers and Boulder County Sheriff?
Miranda,
I'll turn that over to Chief Feinlevin. I will share that we aren't engaging in active recruitment right now. Obviously, there are those unknown pieces that make it very challenging to recruit, especially when people are aware. So I think one of the things we had shared, and it sounds like for future discussion, is that need for your funding commitment so that we can hit the ground running on recruitment, because it's hard to recruit if someone doesn't know what their future looks like. But Chief Feinlevin, you want to speak to what's happening with you and your hours?
Okay. Yeah, I sent a letter to the board. I'm sure you all had an opportunity to read it. So nothing's happening because it's just me. So it's still just me. I don't know how to be any clearer. The Rangers came and saved the day today because I had to do basically a couple of searches that would have taken me all day, but with all of us, it took, I don't know, 5, 6, 8 hours. I can't remember. Yeah. So that's why they're here today. So yeah, I'm not at this point, I'm a little befuddled and I'm a little speechless because I don't really know what to say. So I've made it very clear that I cannot continue to work the hours that are expected of me. And I can't do that in good faith to myself or the community. So and I appreciate the discussion tonight about the future of funding and the possibility of funding, but that's not, so I guess what I would say is, in all due respect, don't waste your time, because if we can't guarantee funding, if these votes don't go through in November, then the police department ends now, literally, because you're asking me to maintain these hours and be the only police officer in this town until, at the earliest, maybe September or after budget season, I'm not sure, but until this vote comes through. So I guess I would gonna pose a question back to the board. What are you asking of me?
Well, don't we have money? Hire people at a higher rate.
So yeah.
I mean, it's not really our fault that there's no applicants, so how can we generate?
Applicant, so we don't, Okay, so there's a couple things going on. So I'm not going to put an ad out to hire people at basically our salary range right now. That fund 50-55, but I am not going to bring people into this department at 50 grand, and I'm not going to bring people in to fire them in November. So it's a lot of investment, a lot of time. You know, I'm already way over on my background budget. Like, I think this is what that letter was about. This is like the operational side of it too, that the board, and again, all due respect, you're not cops. I don't expect you to magically understand what comes into the daily operations of a police department. But what does the board want me to do? What do you expect me to do right now until November? Because I can't hire people in at the new salary. And
You can't hire them at the new salary. It's too low.
So we had increased, so just recently, before we did lose these officers, we did increase it. And Jen and I had talked about $30 an hour. The problem is we're still not seeing the applicants. And while, yes, we could do a really like targeted, aggressive recruitment strategy where we go after you, though I think one of the concerns that stays is we don't want to bring someone on board if there's a possibility that they lose their job. That's not fair to anyone to leave a current position. And so if we can't offer any sort of guarantee of stability, I think that's one of the concerns here with the recruitment strategy. So right now we just have the post out there and are kind of hopeful to see if someone applies, but we have not actually done like targeted recruitment.
well, and also the first recruitment I need to do is going to be, like a sergeant or an FTO, because I need people to train people, because I can't train everybody and be the chief of police and write the policy and write an FTO program. So those, for example, I reached out to the Steamboat Police Department. That chief brought in an interim captain as a solution when she first got hired. I think that salary was, don't quote me because some people have, but it was, the notes are in my office. It was either 140 or 160 for a year, so half of that for 6 months, and in addition, $3,000 a month in rent to get that person a place to stay for those 6 months. So this costs money, but
Right. And we need to see a supplemental budget, right, in order to cover this, right?
This is a longer question. I think we have a fundamental question as a board right now, is we have a town staff member working unsustainable hours in the most important role of health and human safety for our town. Can we limit her to 40 hours and then take the liability as a town because we didn't have our shit together?
I mean, but there's a point here, Trustee Baumhofer, and that is, it is frustrating. It's frustrating because I know that I have asked many times, what do we need? What do we need? And for the entire time that I've been on the board, staff have essentially said, we're good.
Pretty much.
Right? I have not heard that we're not good.
Well, see, as a BOT, we tell town staff what to do, and we set the goals.
Indeed.
And during the fact that this previous board, not this board, previous board was elected during a pandemic, never actually sat down and elected goals. It was some half-an-hour meeting over an email from the former mayor that said, hey, let's just go with economic development, sustainability, and whatever the hell it
And there are
was.
definitely failings on this side, right? There's definitely failings on this side. But there is also that question of like, when it is difficult, I think, for volunteer elected officials to know what is needed at the town staff level, because we don't have expertise in these specific fields, right? We don't have expertise in PD. We don't have expertise in utilities. We don't have expertise in these things. Some of us might have some expertises in some of these things, right? But in general, these elected boards don't. And I'm not saying that like town staff is to blame here, right? I'm saying that there does need, as Trustee Baumhofer said many times, there needs to be more realism over what is actually going on here and what the future looks like. And we need to have room to raise more taxes in the future in order to cover the costs that are coming down the line. This is not the last time this is going to happen, but this has to be, at least as long as I'm on the board, this has got to be the last time that it is such a crisis state, right? But, you know, with total sympathy to Marshall Feinlevin, I don't think that it is, it might be the reality or whatever we want to call it, right? But I don't think that it is democratic or right that this crisis, because of a time frame of a few months, is what leads to the town losing its police department. I just don't think we can let that happen. And I think that we need to find a way to hold it together until November. And if that's saying Marshall Feinlevin works 40 hours a week and then we shrug on the rest of it, or if it's saying we get a supplemental budget that allows us to hire people at $190,000 an hour or whatever it is to come up here and fill the gaps, then that's what we have to do. We have to eat that cost. We've got, I mean, I don't know what the actual number is, but we've got millions of dollars in the bank.
Well,
it's not like we don't have a cushion. We do have a cushion, right?
Fundamentally, I agree with you. Right now, I think there's a crisis of we cannot ask Jennifer to work this anymore. Tonight, we need to limit her to 40, and we need to.
Are we allowed to do that?
Great question. My deal is if you don't, you're not going to have a chief tomorrow.
Yeah.
I think though, so Trustee Garland and I had to kind of exchange some emails this today and a little bit about this. And I think, you know, obviously we have savings in the budget. And so, and Rita and I have talked about this a bit too, is like, yes, we can go ahead and go out there and just say like, we're going to start pulling, but we kind of need that, like almost a little bit of that blind faith of like, Jen and I are going to start paying what we have to. And if that's what the directive is, great. We're going to start paying what we have to pay to get the people in the door.
Well,
and I don't know if you're saying that in this really, really broad scale. And I do. And I think that's wonderful, you know, and I hope if that's what you're saying, then that's what we're going to go start doing. But it has to kind of a no questions asked. Like you have to have that, you're giving us the green light.
Well, like you said, you would hate for November not to have we can't continue to pay this out of our savings indefinitely. So I would personally be in favor of having some blind faith until November and then seeing what happens.
And if November fails?
But that is unfair to the people we might have to fire, but we don't know the future. And it's a bummer that we're in this position where we've been trying to hire these other people, I guess, for months now, or how long have we been this short-staffed?
Well,
that's the thing. I feel like we haven't been communicated. There was never a memo put in our agenda saying that we're, you know, short-staffed this much and we need to have a supplemental budget ASAP and blah, blah, blah. It would have been great had we known this in March.
So obviously a lot of these things did just unfold very quickly.
But it's not a surprise.
Actually, it really isn't a surprise because you both participated in last year's budget session and you both saw that as a 24-hour police department, we've been understaffed since we went 24 hours. We have never been fully staffed.
Well, we're not. When at 24 hours, that's Boulder Sheriff filling in weekends.
Correct.
And
And we contracted with Boulder County because we didn't have enough officers to fill that. And then we also had to supplement Boulder County during the day shifts we did have. We were aware of this. This was in your aim for the last 2 budget years.
I mean, I've asked
just put money
Marshall
in
Johns-
different places.
I asked Marshall Johns directly, do you need more money? The answer was no.
Correct. And that was
So what am I?
This was the budget
What
given
am I
to
supposed to
us.
do about that?
So I do as
Your job is to look at the
It's to
budget
say
and have an event
the
horizon that
wrong.
says,
Right.
yes, actually.
Yeah, but I couldn't do
Well,
that. I didn't have the expertise.
Yeah, we didn't have the information.
So I guess as staff, I do just want to say, we do acknowledge that obviously in the situation that we're in today, it's yes, at the time you asked us all, it was like, we were fine. And to your point, we didn't have department heads saying you need to increase salaries. And in hindsight, perhaps that would have been the case. And if Jennifer Feinlevin was here, I think, and in that budgetary process, it might have been different. And so it's not a matter of even, you know, putting that on a formal marshal.
No,
former
it's
marshal,
not
but it's
any
acknowledging.
formal marshal. It's acknowledging that. But you also had a marshal 3 marshals ago who said this 10 years ago. So it's a matter of paying attention to your town. And fundamentally, yes, our job is to look to town staff, provide town staff with direction. But if you're on this board, fundamentally, it is your responsibility.
Well, yeah,
I'll
but
own
do
it
you
that I
remember-
didn't push more money into the
Do you
budget.
remember in January when we received an email from Miranda asking to pay more money for the marshal position to get more applicants? And the email I received was everybody but me said, no, we don't need to offer more money, and you were not responding.
Yeah, I
So-
was not responding for very good personal
Yeah,
reasons.
and so let's not start saying, pay attention or whatnot. I mean, that was an important decision that in hindsight, I wish we would have offered more money at that time. But
So
now,
fundamentally,
Boulder
what are we
Sheriff
gonna
can't
do about
any
her
more
hours?
Can Boulder Sheriff do more now?
No.
I think that the answer, and Chief, guide me if I'm wrong, is to give us your blind faith. And because we can move applicants quick. I mean, we'll move as fast as we can if there is that green light to say, you're going to start paying people what, like if Jen has some people in her world, and she might, who say, I'll come over, but I'm coming over for 70. Is that, are you saying like, yes, go ahead and do it to create that relief and we can move them
I
quickly
feel like
through the
we've
process?
been saying that.
I feel like you
Kind of,
don't
yeah.
have an option as a
Yeah.
town. You
Right.
cannot expect the
This is
chief
it.
to work 60 hours,
This is
and
it.
what's going to happen?
Sorry, can I just time out for a second? Because part of this conversation is making me uncomfortable because I feel like things are getting a little bit muddled. So, I provided the board with some initial estimates of what I thought the salaries would take, maybe. Already, since this has been out and, talking with people, I'm already getting feedback that laterals probably won't come over here for 70. I'm getting feedback that they're having trouble in the departments that are offering $10,000 and $15,000 bonuses. So the reason why this puts me in a really uncomfortable position is because if the board wants to pull from reserves or something as this like temporary solution, I'm not guaranteeing you it's going to work, right? And so there's two things going on here. And this is why I keep coming back to the guaranteed funding that Miranda just explained. Unless we're planning on hiring these people now and giving them severance pay or saying that if we go under in November, we're still going to give you 6 months or a year, I can't in good faith bring people on knowing that the board is going to come to me after election in November and say, it didn't pass and we can't cut enough to bring this to your doorstep. And we still have the issue of the timing, right? Like, so we had this meeting tonight and the agenda was changed to not be specific to the crisis of the PD, but every week that you wait, I'm getting closer to being forced to resign. And this is not an ultimatum, but Trustee Baumhofer is right. I can't give quality policing when I'm exhausted and then Boulder County is giving me all of the case, like when they're here, they're going to respond to calls when we're paying them, but you're paying people, everybody's getting paid more than I am, and I'm working 3 times as much, and I'm tired. And so if I'm getting all of those cases given to me, I'm not going to be able to cap it at 40 hours. I'm so behind right now.
Yeah.
And so that's why I said that I was befuddled, because I keep coming forward and saying that I know we don't want to be in a crisis and be reactive. I've tried many different ways of being very clear about this situation, but we're still talking about asking the community and finding this language in November. And I don't want the board to, you have so much to do. I don't want to waste your time, because if waiting till November is our only option, I respect that,
No.
but I can't agree to it.
But I don't understand what you want. You're saying, first we're saying, yes, we will commit funds and let's hire people at the rate that you think we can hire people. But then you're saying,
She's saying even if we have a blank checkbook, it's a Hail Mary right now to save our police department.
so, I mean, and then you're also saying that there are no sheriffs available to fill in any gaps. So
Well,
we don't really have any choices, it sounds like.
I can try to add in more extra duty time slots, but the sheriff's office has also been clear that unless we have a concrete plan with a timeline, they will come to us, and they couldn't tell me when, and say, you haven't figured it out yet, so this is not working. And if they raise that right now, right, we have to bring them in at double time. And then if they raise that contract to 140 an hour plus $50 for a car. I mean, so that right there, if you want me to add more hours in, we can try, but they're not even filling up the hours that I have right now for this month. Like Friday, nobody signed up. So I'm working another 14 on Friday. So that's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I'm working 14-hour shifts.
But it sounds like we have no choice then. We have to just recruit and hire people.
But when you say we're offering the funding now, I get that. And I appreciate that. It means a lot to me, but we do need a short term, a midterm, and a long term, but I need a guarantee from the board or whoever it is that no matter what happens in November, whatever money you're agreeing to now, that's roughly, it's 1.2, it's going to be a little bit more because that was only the salaries and et cetera, that will be, you're basically saying that in September, when you do the budget, you're going to find a way to cut money from somewhere to pay the police department or in November.
I don't know if we can cut it. I mean, can we cut?
It's impossible for us to guarantee ongoing funding right now. It's impossible. We cannot do it. It just can't be done because it doesn't exist. The money doesn't exist.
I mean,
the money has to come into existence, and that's through the November ballot, right? We could guarantee a time-limited amount of funding, and what that time limit is, I don't know. Like, I don't know what works from a recruitment standpoint. For instance, we could say, if the ballot initiative fails in November, we'll commit to continuing to basically hemorrhage money from the town to the police department for 6 months. Like, we could say something like that.
So we'll just go 100% broke.
Well, we'll just
Yeah.
go into the red for 6 months.
Go back to Chris
right?
Perry's statement.
Well, we've been operating in the green for a long time. Going into the red for 6 months isn't the end of the world, right? It's a punishment that we take for not planning properly.
And
right?
they would continue to work though, right? It wasn't, we're not just paying them to not work. They would work, and in the meantime,
But then we would phase out the PD.
We work
and
with
we
the
would go into
sheriffs.
contract with the sheriff's office, and it would all turn over. But the question is, would that get the staffing that we need to say, get a supplemental budget right now to say, hire people on, bring people in, we'll commit to through June 2023, ballot initiative, pass or fail?
Here, let's put things in perspective. You've been on the job for 80 days now, right? You came in roughly 80 days ago
April
as chief.
19 I was sworn in,
Okay.
appointed February 8.
Okay. We've got 133 days until a ballot initiative. Another reality is it takes roughly 6 months to get somebody, once hired, productive, right?
So that's $1 million question. If I was able to bring a lateral in from somewhere, from an agency within Boulder County, that, like a deputy, from within Boulder County, that train, and depending on their experience, then that training hopefully would be abbreviated. If I'm bringing in somebody from out of state, that's going to be longer. And so unfortunately, it's hard to say, but it should be when you get through that hiring process, which Miranda and I have been really good at expediting that. And generally it's the psych or the poly that holds us up. Sometimes they're booked about 3 weeks out. But if we had an applicant that was really good, start to finish, we could get somebody in, and maybe through Christie, in 6 weeks. And then their training would be anywhere up to that, the 16-week FTO, or, this is what we're trying to standardize, right? Like, not the old, like when I came, I rode with Chief Johns for literally 1 day. I mean, that's what I did.
Okay.
But I came in with a lot of experience, and I had worked for Boulder County Sheriff's Office, and I was used to talking on the radio. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, you're looking at a minimum of, Miranda, I would say a minimum of 8 weeks to get somebody in through the door, because we'd have to,
So
get the
what
ad
do we
in.
do in the meantime with those 8 weeks? So it sounds like that 8 weeks is almost November.
Yeah, we're 16 weeks till November.
So half that. What are our other choices?
How long would it take to contract with Boulder County, which is, I believe, what acting Mayor Pro Tem mentioned, he needs more time to
Right.
gather this because we've all been juggling this crisis.
Right. So that's the other choice. I mean, we really, but it sounds like we don't have time even for that more time to get more information. So I don't know.
I think we need relief, like immediate relief.
Yep.
And I don't know what the sheriff's department can offer. I put in a call this morning to Curtis Johnson and to the guy that we'd have to contract with, or that we do contract with now, to see what our options are. I have to get that clarified.
Okay. So I can answer those questions for you because
Please.
I've already had meetings with them, and that traditionally would be my job to speak with them. So the sheriff's office is not willing. I went to the sheriff's office originally and asked them to take over for Nederland for 6 months so I could build a department.
Right.
So that's not an option. We've talked about trying to increase the contract we already have, the hours. That was not an option. We can move those same 8 hours, or what is it, 10, 12, 6, 8 hours. Yeah. We can move those 8 hours around a little bit, but there's some specifics to in which direction because of the way that their shifts work and when our bars close. So we're really stuck to that 8-hour contract. They won't make it 10. They won't make it 12. They won't add a day. They will supplement as they are with these extra duty signups. But that's with all of those things that I listed in the letter, right? That depends on their staffing, and that and then if we're going to continue to be requesting that amount of help, they're going to give us the contract rate. So there's no changing our contract to have them here other than paying the extra duty rate outside of the 8 hours.
Yeah. Which to me seems like what we have to do.
Well, we need to get a handle on what that's going to cost before we can just blanket say that.
Well, right.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is the thing. It's like,
It's going to cost
We
you
need these numbers.
$140, right about $140 an hour if they decide, and if and when, which they said they would, they just don't know when, but they said it would not be, they would not maintain this rate through November. They said they would guarantee it for August, and that was where they might do it for September, I don't know, but they definitely said not through November. So that will raise it to right about $140 an hour because it's 71 an hour is their time and a half. So plus $50 a day for a car.
I need to see it rolled up to Rita's level so that we can look at it that way.
Right, so in listening, I mean, so let's just say they do it through September, right? We're gonna be coming before you with a supplemental budget anyway, so that would have to be supplemental budget. Obviously, it sounds like that would be doable, right? I mean,
For the sheriff's office to work extra duty
yes, ma'am.
through,
Let's just say if you're telling me through the end of September, right? We come with a supplemental budget,
Right.
right?
yeah.
And maybe within 2 months, you find somebody, right? You can find somebody at a higher rate.
If you're talking about the ends justifying the means, meaning Boulder County can supplement the hours and the board guarantees funding regardless of what happens in November or whatever we're talking about, and we're actually moving forward and hiring people, and Boulder County is taking on more hours than they are right now, yeah. But you're saying that you're not saying that you will, you're discussing things like guaranteeing the funding until, I think you said June.
I just threw that out there, right?
Right, yeah. So I can tell you that, and Miranda might be able to speak to this too, because she's been, you went to the recruiting class specific to PD. I don't think I'm going to be able to recruit people in here disclosing that. I don't, you're talking about people leaving, because I need laterals. You're talking about people leaving agencies that have para or, you know, they have a guaranteed job. It's really, it takes a lot to get hired. I mean, the process is you've got a psych, a background, your medical, your oral boards, your written tests. Like people don't like to go through that process over and over again, you know, but would you agree? I'm trying to be open-minded, but I don't want to sound negative, but I don't see people agreeing to that.
You know, we did post the sergeant position at a higher rate on LinkedIn, and I have had a few, and I've been very transparent, and it's alarming for them, especially if we're trying to get them to leave a job. Like some of them are like, oh, I'm moving, whatever, their circumstances may be more open to it. It will be challenging. Yeah, it will be challenging to get anyone who's in a current stable environment, and we do want to be transparent with them. Yeah, I mean, I think one of the challenges obviously is that we're competing against others. Even when we went to the academy, when Larry and I went to the academy to recruit, everyone had already been pretty much slotted. So it is going to be tough. Like our recruitment strategy is going to have to be aggressive.
And can I ask, are we required to have 24-hour coverage?
It's what we claim that we have. So
Right, but
as
are
a
we
town, these
required
are the
to?
services that we provide. If nobody's there to answer, well, that's just opening yourself up for legality.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so part of the complication with that, and Attorney Madsen, correct me if I'm wrong, because sometimes I am. Don't tell my father I admitted that. So when we decided to have our own police department, then statutorily the sheriff's office is not obligated here at all.
Mhm.
And so as a courtesy, and they agree to take what we call priority one or in progress calls when available. And so until somebody from NED can get here, right? So if we are cutting back our hours and we're relying on that as a strategy, again, for a certain amount of time, if the ends are justifying the means, there probably will be okay with that based on some conversations I've had, depending, but I'm still responding from home.
Yeah.
So I'm still getting paged in. And it's just, you know, that's a lot for I mean, it's hard to police like that, you know, like.
Yeah, I'm not saying that I think we can do a good job until November 7th, right? I'm not right now, in my mind at least, I'm not necessarily looking for solutions that are going to be good solutions. I'm looking for getting us barely bloody dragged and beaten over the line so that we don't have to lose the PD undemocratically, right? That to me is the core of this, right? If we lose the police department in an undemocratic way, we have failed very hard as a board, right? And we're on the verge of doing that. And that to me would be it's just not acceptable. Right?
It is actually in a democratic way, though. It is the consequences of misallocation of resources.
Okay, this is true.
And it's not only being that we served on the previous board that passed this budget. I agree with you.
Yeah.
We did ask town staff, we were shown, but historically, this town this is our precedence as a town, is to ignore what we know is the problem and to finance and fund feel-good projects. So this is actually a democratic failure.
Yes.
And at this point, I still come back to that we don't have the answers. And this is why Tom tried to keep this off the agenda tonight. Now there's a fundamental issue that
tomorrow.
Here's what I'm going to say. Supplemental budget for the next 2 weeks so that Jen has coverage and only works 40-hour weeks. Within 2 weeks, we'll be back here. We'll have the information. And in reality, we're probably going to have to make the decision to give up our PD. But we have to think about it that we still have Boulder County, which means Jennifer could still apply to Boulder County and apply to come work in NED. We could get JP back.
They won't let me work in NED, so that's not how it works.
But the idea of the fact of, have you talked with our PD officers from Boulder County who are on late at night? They are well-respected individuals that are very good. Fundamentally, I kind of think we need to just say supplemental budget for the next month while we figure out what we need to figure out, but we need to cut her to 40 hours a week. That should be the direction tonight.
Right.
Oh,
Absolutely.
critical piece in law enforcement that you have to pay attention to in this process that is. that
Identify
needs to be
yourself
mission.
first, please.
Chad Clifford with the Colorado Rangers.
Great.
Every criminal case, everything that happens in this town is not chosen. It happens when it happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
Every time a Boulder County deputy goes and works one of those cases right now, let's say there's a murder or there's a wreck or something like that in this town, that's still going to have to go back to her desk. She is wholly responsible for the investigation of that, the prosecution of it, what's required from the district attorney's offices, et cetera, for all of that. Without her and the hours that she's doing, all of that is going to come to a halt at some point in time really badly. So it doesn't matter, you know, if you don't have something that is like giving her immediate, like you don't bring someone in that can just step in and start to help her take that caseload. No matter what you do with the county, those cases are still going to continue to build and build and build and build. And I've even been up here enough in the last few weeks to know she's got a hell of a caseload. I mean, I've been here now on 2 felonies. And that is going to take some time for her to deal with and even take that stuff through. I mean, that's hours and hours and hours of work. So it doesn't matter what you do with the deputies and the more and more that you bring that in. If you don't get immediate support in your own department to start sharing some of that responsibility and that caseload, and so that she has a human being to delegate something to, this is going to be a really short conversation.
I do have this gives me an idea, at least. I mean, I don't know if this is real, but okay, we have tens of thousands of dollars that are budgeted to the PD right now that aren't being spent because they're budgeted for salaries that we're not paying because there's nobody there, right? So it's not like we have to necessarily even dip into reserves, right? We have budgeted these salaries based on what we think is fully staffed PD. If we reduce the number of staff that we're expecting to have and hire them at a higher rate that we actually can guarantee on a long-term basis, then we can have an understaffed but staffed police department that has more than Marshall Feinlevin until the November election, right?
Well, I do, I'll let the chief respond to this. I will say for Jen and I, that's what we've always done. Like since she's been here, we pull up the spreadsheet, we move some numbers, we move these people, and what happens when you have this many officers and this many officers, and we've done that. I think the challenge is getting the body. We have played those figures numerous times and can keep doing so.
But right now we're budgeted for how many officers total?
So it gets a little tricky because there was a time where we were like, no sergeant. It's really your sergeant really impacts that. But I think it would be like sergeant and potentially at that higher rate, 2 officers under the current budget structure would potentially work for now, what we have left over in salaries.
Yeah, as of the end of June, we have $30,000 in savings in the salaries.
Right, and only half the year left to go. So it's not like you bring someone on for say 70, 80, you're not paying them that for the full amount. But yes, eventually we will still need to come to you with a supplemental.
Yes.
But that's what I've been saying is we do have enough to make those moves now. I think the biggest thing is just the long-term guarantee, and that is a struggle to recruit if you can't provide that. But we have been giving it a shot. We've done that now with a sergeant. We can try it with officers, but I'd love for Chief for you to weigh in. But I know I just want to guarantee that we share with you, we have been doing that.
Could we hire somebody to assist her? Do they have to be a police officer to do the paperwork? So it has to be you? It can't.
It has to be a police officer because it's not just paperwork.
Right.
And then, it's investigations, it's understanding the elements of the crimes, it's interviewing, it's handling evidence, it's having to be on my report writing system.
Right.
So-
It's not just paperwork.
No. So,
I mean, it sounds like we would be lucky to even find one person right now with the rate of nobody wants to work here. I mean, I can't imagine that we couldn't guarantee that one extra person a salary for the year, even if the ballot issue failed, which I doubt it will. I mean, the whole budget extra you're asking for is $250,000, right?
that was for the salaries and that was for, so yeah, so my PowerPoint was saying that we needed a staff of 7. And there was a miscommunication between Troy and me. So unfortunately, the numbers in that were for 6.
I see.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
Oh, 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, it looked like it was only about $250,000 higher than what we currently.
For the
budget.
salaries, yeah, there was a mistake in that, which this is.
So what is the
nothing I
actual
can do about
number
it now.
higher that we need to generate to
Well,
fill
if we
this
went with the
budget?
staff of 7, you'd have to add the one more staff, which was.
So that what I prepared for tonight is wrong then? Because I used your numbers for.
I just realized this because Troy and I had a conversation.
Yeah, I
He's
just
like,
want to know, like, what are we trying to generate?
So give me a second, we're pulling it out. So that, Excel spreadsheet I prepared for, what it would be for 23 is, so what I did is I did a 10% increase and a 15% increase.
Yeah.
On most of them, and then there were some that I just, like Chief Fine-Lovin's numbers, I put those in because those were fixed amounts. So on a 10%, it would be an increase of $375,000, and on 15%, $390,000.
Oh, I see that now. Sorry.
It's
I
like
guess I was
it's
looking at
quick.
last week's stuff.
Percent,
Mhm.
just to kind of come up with a number. So I wonder then, you're saying, so that if those were 6, so we would have to add another 1/6 to all that, to the salaries piece, right? If that's for 6.
Just salary, yeah.
Right.
So that's.
I do think recruiting to 7 is pretty challenging right here, right now, for sure. Like,
I
that's-
just wanted to make
Yeah,
sure because
you
I
guys
just
have been
found
trying to
that.
hire for a long time, apparently. I don't know. What are we deciding here? We need some choices. I need them clear for me to say yes, no, what.
Technically, this discussion was never part of this.
I understand, but,
Right.
but this
Has
seems
to be.
unsustainable.
It has to be.
Like, how could we walk away from this meeting and just pretend like this isn't happening?
We can't wait until November or our marshal is going to resign and we're not going to have a police department.
I mean, we need
We also
something.
don't have the information we need to have to actually make the final choice. So what I am suggesting is when,
When can we do this?
pretty much, when's our next meeting? When can we get this information to actually look at? And here's the fundamental question. How much quicker can contracting county provide us with policing that is any different than the situation we're currently in with our own police force? That's the fundamental question we actually have
Because
to
if
look
they're
at.
not even going to staff us for 6 months, then then this is irrelevant.
Then yeah.
We just don't have
Again,
police for 6 months.
we don't know that's a fact.
Right, but what
So
do we know then? How do we make
what we
decisions?
do know is a fact is that it will take them about 3 months to get you a sergeant. That's what I presented to you is from meeting with the division chiefs and and then yeah, so it will take, that's what they said. It will take about 3 months to get a sergeant up here and then about 6 months probably to get a deputy. In the
Okay.
meantime, the rest of that time, they'll be responding to priority 1 calls when available.
So the same situation that we're in now.
The same situation that you're in now, with me out of the equation.
Right.
So the
So
difference.
even worse.
Well, yeah, I mean, so there is an option for you to go into contract with Boulder County and for me to stay on until they can get at least their sergeant up here. But we're still looking at the same issues. We could try to come up with an agreement where, I don't know about the cases. I'm not even really sure. And that, so, my big thing is my liability and the hours, which I've already, expressed to you in that letter. So I think that, this is my point, is that usually the county says they want a year to go into contract with anybody because it takes the same problem we're having right now, because it takes them that long to hire and train people.
Yeah.
And so we're in a pickle.
Well, what are you suggesting we do? Is there any immediate relief for any solution to provide immediate relief? Sounds like none.
I think we cap our hours and we accept that the caseload's going to fall behind in the town of Nederland. We cap our hours.
I mean,
and
that's what I'm
caseload's gonna
thinking though.
fall
Like
behind.
that's going to happen.
We cap our hours, sure, okay, and we
Caseload's
try to
gotta
hire
fall
more
behind
Boulder County sheriff as much as possible.
So I think if I increase a little bit of that, of the extra duty or with Boulder County supplementing, and instead of capping my hours maybe, but what I can do is at least I can designate a certain percentage of my week to being in the office just to do paperwork, and even if they're here taking calls, because I just simply can't get it all done in 40 hours. I'm sorry.
Right, no, we don't
But-
expect you to at all.
Yeah.
We're not saying work 40 hours and get it all done. We're saying work 40 hours and don't get it all done.
Well, that's not possible. So felony cases have to be filed within, many components of them have to be filed within 72 hours.
Okay.
But then after that, there's a lot of follow-up. And so, it's, some of this stuff require, generally, like, I was on the phone with the deputy chief of Pueblo the other day, and I was, discussing one of my investigations that I'm having right now and some issues with it. And he was telling me about how it's been really hard for them too, because he was in charge as the chief because the chief was on vacation, and they had a homicide, and he was telling me how he only had 8 people show up. So I'm laughing, right?
Only 8. Yeah.
Only 8. And so what's happening up here is you have one officer doing investigations that normally, like Boulder County, would just call a detective, 2 detectives on scene. And then you have like your evidence tech, and you have your, and so.
And can we clarify that you're not responding to calls outside of town limits?
Well, if I'm requested, we do mutual aid. So if I'm requested for cover, or it's a rollover accident in the water at the, 29 or 30.
Right, but they have a whole sheriff's department. We have just you.
There are
So
times when they're called upon to
I know,
actually,
but that's what I'm saying. Can we not do that?
Well, so
Ethically, it's
that's
pretty
sort of
tough.
our,
I mean, it's the reality of our situation.
so I tried that last night with RTD.
Uh-huh.
It didn't work very well.
real well.
They never showed up. So I called their sergeant today, and he's looking into it. But, yeah, I mean, it's, if you heard me on the radio last night, I just was saying to dispatch, I'll get there when I can get there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what's happening.
Well, because so frequently, like this has happened to me multiple times, right? I've been in the canyon or somewhere, miles and miles outside of town, and something's going on, and a cop car pulls up, and who jumps out but Marshall Johns, like at that
Yeah.
time, and it's like, what are you doing out here?
So we
Like-
are requested, and sometimes if, the county is short also, they have sometimes one mountain deputy working, and they go all the way to Allen's Park. So if also when they have a priority 1 call, yes, I will respond, and I won't say no, because that's priority of life, right? And so we all follow that motto, and they're doing a lot to help us, a lot. And I'm just not comfortable sending the message back to them like I am unavailable. I would never volunteer to go to something that they can handle,
Gotcha.
right?
Well,
We're-
I'm feeling less magnanimous about the
We're,
sheriff's department.
we're
than
at,
you are, but-
but we're not her supervisor. This is a tough job. We're at 9:30 right now.
We're not who's supervisor.
We're not Jen's supervisor, Miranda is.
Well, we hire the marshal.
Yeah.
Miranda doesn't.
Okay, what's a possible move?
Do we want, before we go further, we need to extend. Do we have a motion for that?
Oh, yeah, extend to 10.
Well, so, yeah, I mean, this is a work session, which you didn't have an end time. I mean, I know you kind of self-imposed one, but
Okay.
it is.
Do we think we're going to solve something tonight?
Well, I would like to know what the timeline is for solving it tonight. Because I don't think it can be, I mean, if tomorrow Jen is working, 30 hours in a 24-hour day, I mean, what are we doing? We can't just sit on our hands and wait.
We can't just keep kicking the can, right, as you say.
Like, we need a supplemental budget tomorrow night, and we need to vote on it.
Again, you don't need a supplemental budget for us to just start recruiting. I'm just going to keep, well, yes, one's coming, but you don't need to approve one tomorrow to tell us I'm happy to just start grabbing people at whatever we can get them at. I mean, that's.
Yeah, but if that were the case, I don't understand why we didn't recruit months ago if it was just a case of coming to us and doing this.
So it's the long-term funding component that
Right.
that really is essential. Obviously as recruiters, in good faith, I cannot bring someone on board and not tell them the reality.
But, and also just, we were recruiting months ago. I had somebody tracked to come in as sergeant, and somebody else was going through academy. And
Yeah,
so-
I think this year alone, we've done 6 interviews, which doesn't sound like a lot, but for the police department, I think is huge. I mean, 6 interviews for town in general is big. So the recruitment effort is there. It's just that they haven't worked out. We had one who couldn't, they both didn't make it through the background phases, and there's nothing we can do about that. But the effort has always been there, and I think that that's important for the board to.
Then one, we gave a conditional that went to another agency.
Right.
I hate to say this, but this is the perfect storm, and it might not be entirely a failure of this board. Jen's original PowerPoint, Commerce City is down 131
Yeah.
officers. You think they don't have the money to hire at the best of the best of the best and give them the best of the best of the best, like former Chief Carreau talked about, nice cars, pensions?
No.
We can't do this. It's bad math. We want a police department as a town. We have tried for 5 years, and currently this is the end result. It's bad math.
Yeah. But also, we're in a position where even if we made this other decision, it doesn't solve anything.
No, it doesn't, but we don't have a police department anymore, so now
Yep.
those cases are Boulder County's problems and not ours.
But I was hearing that that's not the case, that we'll only get priority 1 calls and that the caseload will build up anyway for whoever ends up coming up here.
Conditionally, that's true. Essentially, if we throw in the towel, that starts the process.
Right.
And
But it's a
pro-
process that ends at the same time as the election, basically, which is kind of nuts.
You get, again, I don't have enough facts to say that's for sure true. I
But
don't know.
3 months is, if it's 3 months
For a sergeant,
for someone to actually be responsible for the cases in Nederland.
yeah, I would have, I can clarify with them. So I think, this is a little bit murky for me, and this is kind of the thing of like, the way I understand it, which is why I wanted them to come tonight, is that, so they didn't create this problem, and they're here to help us and support us, and they really have. And that's what this responding to priority 1 calls is. And, but they are not going to jeopardize their operations or their staffing to get somebody up here sooner.
Right.
And these contracts usually, like I said, require a year. So from the way it was explained to me, is that if your police department goes down or goes under and it's not here, that you guys would, work on that contract right away. They will write the contract to say, we will staff with a sergeant by this date.
Mm-hmm.
We will staff with the deputy by this date. And until that date, it won't be in the contract, but they agree to respond to your priority 1 calls. And then you have a town where people will not be reporting barking dogs unless you'll keep your night contract. But
there'll be nobody to refer those cases to.
Right.
Right.
Well, they'll probably bill you if you refer them to, I'm just guessing right now. I mean, they may come up with a different rate for you. Right now, what happens is outside of that contract, they bill you at 71 an hour for a detective or follow-up. They don't actually do it though.
Right.
But it's in the contract.
I mean,
So that's what would happen if you got, but maybe they would work something out. I don't know.
We're straying pretty far from what we wanted to do tonight, but I think we're doing something productive. I don't know that we're going to be able to resolve much more tonight. Does anybody feel differently?
I don't think we're going to be able to solve anything more, but I think the discussion that was had tonight, both in terms of reality of budget as a town being big picture, can we even exist as a municipality the way we have been existing? Pretty obvious right now, no, because everything's imploding. Now the fundamental question, because we chose to do that for the last 20 years, is there any chance on God's green earth we can save our PD? Really doesn't look like it. So I think I would like to motion to table this, bring it back first thing on Tuesday, get as much information as we could, but tonight I don't think we're going to get anywhere.
Can you offer clarification of what specifically you're looking for on Tuesday? Is that what Mayor Pro Tem Mahold was talking about, or what is it that you
A
want?
decision of whether or not we're going to keep the Nederland Police Department.
You want information. I'm not, I guess maybe Chief, if you feel otherwise, but I'm not sure what more you're looking for from us, or if that's what Mayor Protem.
Confirmation that if we throw in the towel on our PD, that we will actually have some type of police coverage. Because currently we're saying we have police coverage, but we really don't have police coverage.
So I think, and Mayor, or yeah, Mayor Protem let me know, I think that would be bringing Division Chief Chamberlain and Johnson to the meeting, because you really need to hear it from them, not through
Agreed.
staff.
Agreed.
So could we work on that?
Do you want me to make another invitation? Okay.
Let's do that. I think we got the budget stuff done. That's 133 days off. That's long-term. It's not even medium-term. So we haven't solved the short-term problem. We haven't solved our medium problem, and we've begun to work on a long-term solution, but we're not there yet either. So I think that's about the best we're going to do tonight. It's not very satisfying.
It's not, but it's the best we can do with the information we have. That's my feeling tonight.
So let's, I guess, it's going to be Tuesdays from here on out until we get this resolved.
Okay.
Because, yeah.
But I mean, that's not the decision of the board. That's what town staff is telling us, right?
How do you mean?
Well, I mean, we don't have the ability to make a decision to commit $500,000 a year to the police department because we don't have it, right? So that's not an option, right? So if Marshall Feinlum is looking for that as an option to, like tonight or even on Tuesday, then it's not an option.
We don't have it till
No,
November. We
it's
have
not going to happen.
At some point, and maybe I misunderstood, there was some conversation about the town or the board wouldn't be able, and the board wouldn't be able to commit to fund if November didn't go through until they got through the budgeting process in September. So that's why I kept coming back saying, well, I can't wait till September and I can't wait till November. But if that information presented to me is inaccurate, then my apologies. But I think, well, Mayor, that's what we were talking about. And so I don't know.
But you can't make it to the end of September as it currently
Well,
stands.
so logically, so of course, because I'm not a board member and I don't, Rita works a ton of hours and so does Miranda, of course, me, right? Because I'm in emergency services. I'm like, okay, well, let's do the budget next week.
Right.
Why are we waiting till September if that's really what you want to do to save this department and we're talking about guaranteed funding?
But we can't come up with $500,000 that isn't there until we get the
Whether
money
we
from
budget it or
the
not,
election.
it's just not possible.
And so that
It's not
was
just cutting corners.
But in the earlier conversations, we were Miranda, help me out here. There was some conversation about where we might be able to pull it from here or here.
Right. So there's obviously, when we've talked about it, there's the funds in the reserves right now that is available.
Right. We
I
can
think
use
when
that
we
right
talk
now.
larger scale, when you look at 2023, of course, you're going to want to see how these figures match up to the budget in its entirety, and I think that was a lot of the conversation is, are you willing to commit the 1.2 million or whatever that is, no matter what, and you'll figure it out in budget season, how to make that
Thanks,
figure work.
officers.
Thank you.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I guess in
Okay.
reality, we could commit the $500,000 extra from what's in our reserves.
Right, but that's not
That's
not forever. That's until the reserves
That's
run.
1 year.
That's all we can commit.
So we could probably promise that, right? But
And Rena and I did assess that the reserves would likely cover this year and next year. So that gives us a little bit of cushion.
Reserves
Yes.
are reserves. When you pull that chute, you got no more
Correct.
reserves.
Yeah.
Right.
But I guess the point here is we put something on the ballot. We commit the reserve. Like, here's my dream scenario, right? That works magically somehow, right? Maybe it doesn't. I don't know. But we say we're committed. We're going to go into the red for 1 year. We're committed to doing that through the end of this year and then through the end of next year. We'll go into the red. We'll take this hit one way or the other. We could say this. I'm not saying we should. I'm saying we could. November 8th happens. Ballot initiative passes. All of it becomes moot. We worked in the red for a few months and we're actually back on track. We've got the budget we need and we start recruiting for the long term. I mean,
that's a wonderful dream.
This is my, like, that's all I can think of at this point, right? Is saying you pretty much have a blank check for recruiting Boulder County sheriffs through the election.
But they can't
Wait, are we,
budget by.
you're saying the recruiting to join us to, or Boulder County Sheriff's
Exactly.
Office
Like-
as
Like
extra
whatever you
duty?
need to pay them to cover shifts, because
Okay.
you can't recruit someone instantly.
Plus the recruiting effort.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
Like to cover shifts, $140 an hour, go for it. We're not spending money on 5 police officers right now. I mean, we might as well use that money for one person to cover some time, right? Every now and again. And in the meantime, we can commit to spending into the red for 1 year. I'm not saying I'm going to vote for that right now. I'm saying that's
Yeah, that's an option.
I'm putting that forward as, is that actually
I'm
an
just
option?
like, if-
Or do I misunderstand our situation? Like, is that,
If everything passes on the ballot, it would just cover the budget for the police. So it would just, and there'd be nothing for any other departments that we're.
well, it depends on what percentage we put on the ballot.
Well, you know,
And what people tell us they're willing to pay.
yeah, that's true.
That's
So,
0.5% covers the PD budget, right?
right, well,
no
no.
guarantees that we're going to get it.
yeah,
That's
no.
that's the wild card.
Yeah, there's no guarantees, but this is what I'm saying. Like, if we want to save the PD, as the people of the town overwhelmingly have been telling us they want us to do, I haven't heard anybody speak against that, right? So it seems kind of crazy that we would take all that feedback from the town and then say, let's dissolve the police department. That just doesn't track for me, right? It's illogical. What's logical to me is to say they want us to save it. We have some
At all
funds and
costs.
reserves. Let's save. We'll make the money back. We will make
may
the money
not.
back.
I mean, if it doesn't pass, we will lose it. And
No,
then
we'll
be back.
No, but we've
with
been
the
we
sheriff.
you
I'm
know
willing to take that
the
chance.
world works. You know, it's like
You want to speak, Chris, or you just standing? Look,
why else do we have reserves?
You guys are going round and round on a question that's pretty damn simple.
yeah.
The question is, Chief Fine Welding and Miranda Fisher here want the okay to go higher. If we don't go higher, we don't get the sheriff's department to come up here and cover our asses. That's not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So you give her the okay now and Miranda the okay now that yes, we have reserves, go higher, find somebody, find a sergeant, find a trainee, a deputy. Even though the picking is slim, there may be somebody out there that's like, wow, Netherlands, yeah, I want to be there. And yeah, I will take a little bit of cut in pay, but I'm living in Netherlands. That might be the option.
Mm-hmm.
You know, or the other option is you tell Chief Lovin and you throw her under the bus and say, we're taking on the Boulder County Sheriff's Department and your job is over. That she just got hired for. It's that cut and dry.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I don't think there was any prohibition or instruction not to hire. The reality is nobody's coming if we can't guarantee that they're going to fund the jobs that we hire for.
Right, we also just haven't had the conversation of just like, what do you want? Here's typically what we ask them what their salary requirement is, we share with them what our hiring range is, it's either a match or it's not a match. Obviously that changes the dynamic. But again, that cautionary tale of like that, that number, say it's 80, 90 is more than a large majority of staff makes. I really want to put that into perspective that, again, I want to be careful about the crisis rolling.
You're going to get a chain reaction.
So if we're ready to,
Well, I mean, but we're going to have that regardless.
Yeah.
right, and that's okay. I mean, that's just, we've already shared that cautionary tale. It's just something to be mindful of that, and this is, if this is the way we're going, this is what we're going to do.
Welcome back.
But
There's just, I like to point out the things that are not getting said. So there's also let's say the police department closes and you move back to Boulder County. It's not just a matter of moving those cases. You have an entire city infrastructure. You've got city court. You guys, I have no idea how much you bring in fines from that alone, just from what you manage from that world. But you've got an entire infrastructure that thread gets pulled on, and it all kind of comes apart. So it's going to have massive implications far beyond what you're talking about tonight when you go back to a non-local policing model. When you have frozen dead guy, I mean, even our agency, we're an intergovernmental agreement with your city, with this police department. We're not with Boulder County. I mean, they could come and make some agreement with us, but like even for your major events a year, I mean, what they sent 2 deputies, I think, that we had with us on certain times and days during I don't know what the
Yeah, those
numbers
were-
are. I'm just saying that when you start to think about letting it all go, there's a big balloon that bursts there when you do that. So, I hope you guys can come up with a way to get this sorted out.
Me too.
Maybe there's a piecemeal, bite-sized thing. You can have them give you guarantees for a sergeant and another person and say, we will keep those two positions funded or something, so that you have more budget cycles or something like that. But good luck with this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would that be helpful if we did follow that approach?
The guaranteed funding for,
Those two?
you mean even if November doesn't pass? Yeah, yes, I think. I mean, I have to think of, sorry, I'd have to
No,
think about
I
that.
know. I think
That's-
because time is of the essence, I think essentially you need to think it through, put some numbers to it, feed them to Rita in a way that we can put into the budget.
If it would have to be like a sergeant and a lateral, like an FTO. No, I'd have to think about that because I'm just asking for the same headache.
But isn't that
Not
what you
enough
had
staff,
before
not
the other
enough
two
staff.
quit? Was just two other people?
So we
Let's not get too bogged down in numbers. Let's
yeah.
It's
Get a process.
Yep.
And we would, yeah, so, yeah, so what I presented originally was like, here's what you need to have a successful police department. Like, we need a staffing of 7 because if someone wants a day off or someone's sick, that
Covered.
still won't cover it. That's still somebody working on their day off to
Yep.
cover a shift. So when we talk about, well, if it's me and a sergeant, like, and an officer, that means we're 3, which is what we have been chronically, which is why people still are leaving. Like, we can't, I'm really cautious about what I'm saying right now because I don't want to say negative.
I know.
Like, without coming up with a solution. This is what we should have been doing like a year ago, right?
Yeah.
So, the time to have convinced the town and I've said this before, I've had conversations about this. The time to have convinced this town that to keep Ned PD and not have the sheriff's office take over was like 2 years ago. And that's where we really should have been building and bringing in the quality people and not having this high turnover so that we wouldn't be here today. And so the part that I'm really struggling with is I know everybody's looking to me for a solution, but we just, like I said, we just don't really have, unfortunately, we don't have a lot of options. I mean, this is just very factual, but yeah, I mean, I would, if you guaranteed funding for a sergeant and officer, I have to think about that and look at it on paper and what a schedule would be like. And then what do you mean? Like, what happens if the ballot doesn't pass in November, then you're saying try to hire the rest at the 50,000 that we're hiring them at now?
That's never going to go. We can never make that work.
Okay. All right.
That's not going to happen. Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. We've got to get, we don't, short, medium, and long term, you and I have been kicking this around for about 10 days now. We're nowhere closer really than we were then.
No, I just need I guess what I need is for someone to say, okay, here's what we can offer you. Here's what we can guarantee. And here it is. And then I can tell you if I can do it both like personally, professionally,
Right.
and still providing the services that the town expects. And then Attorney Madsen can talk about the liability side of it, right?
Okay, so I think what I'm hearing is you are going to have to sit down. You're going to have to do some thinking and be realistic.
Well, I need you to tell me what you're actually guaranteeing before I get, right? I don't know what you're.
Well, and Attorney Madsen would like to say something. So
Go ahead.
I just am a little bit concerned about how long we've been on this topic because it wasn't noticed on the agenda.
You're right. Good point.
We are not taking minutes.
Oh,
And
you're
we're
right.
recording, which is good, but you can't make any decisions tonight. It's a work session.
Thank
So
you.
you cannot make any decisions.
Okay. Then I think we've reached the end of what we can do tonight.
I mean, I just feel like we can't wait a week.
We don't have an option. Tuesday. One question. Sorry, that was a little bit rough.
We could do
Why
Thursday.
don't we get line item budgets? Because I've been a part of the budget process. So why don't we get the line item? Because we're being asked to find money in a budget that we don't have line items for.
So you did
we
get
do.
the line items today, right?
No.
Yeah, and, yes, you did. And
Yeah.
Oh, the overall budget, like you said. So I'm talking about like vehicles, maintenance.
so the whole police departments, you got all the line items in there.
What about general fund and all that? And
So all we were doing tonight was police.
yes, just in the budget process. We will get that like down to like the,
You owe it, yeah. Every budget year you get that.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
get the detail.
you do.
I'll come into town hall and clarify.
Well, it's, yeah, I took a look at it this morning, and you probably should too.
Yeah, you get it every year.
So I agree with Attorney Mattson. I think we're straying outside of what we noticed tonight, and I think we've done as much as we can. Board, I'll be working with Miranda and Rita to suss things out. I strongly suggest that you guys take a look at our budget too. I think we will revisit this again. What's our next scheduled meeting and when do we, because we may need
Tuesday.
this upcoming Tuesday. So there's a lot of things on that agenda that are probably gonna have to get pushed off. And we're gonna have to deal with this. Board, are you okay with that approach?
I think we should meet earlier than Tuesday. I want to meet on Thursday. We can have a 24-hour notice by then.
Yes.
And I think we should have the information, and I think we should make a decision.
Do you believe we're gonna have the information we need to make?
I
any
mean,
decisions by-
I'm getting frustrated now. I'm getting
I
very
know.
frustrated. I'm frustrated with town staff as well, because this information is information we need to make decisions. You have to pull it together. You have to. You have to know how much money we have. You just have to know.
But they
You have
do.
to know what it costs. You have to give us these numbers. We keep asking, what do you need? What do you need? What do you need? We keep getting these weird, vague responses. What do you need to make it work? We need to know. And if the answer is $1.2 million, no questions asked forever, I can't give you that. None of us can give you that. It doesn't exist.
$500,000 more than what we already would have budgeted.
Sure,
Okay,
but,
so that's
but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Motion to extend meeting.
Well, we don't have a cutoff time.
It's a work session. But I don't know that we've got the authority under the way it's noticed to continue. And what do you want, I mean, what information would we need to have in order to make the decisions you want to make?
I mean, I think we need to have a number and a timeline. Like, we need this much money for this long. Like, it can't be forever,
I would like a comparison.
you know? And if 6 months isn't enough, what does it look like at a year? And if a year isn't enough, what does it look at 18 months? And then we can make the decision that, okay, well, we can't do it, or we can do it. Like, how much is in reserve? How much of that reserve can we actually allocate to this? Like, all these questions, like, we still don't have answers to. We still don't have them.
I mean, we could say, like, give everybody 2 weeks to see if they can hire anybody. If they can hire 3-4 people on then we.
That's not going to happen.
Well, I mean, they're saying it could. They're saying if they actively.
We can't do it in 2 weeks. It's going to take us 6 to 8 weeks. We
Okay.
can't do anything that fast.
See, I feel like we're being put in a position here.
We are.
What are we supposed to do?
But we're being put in this position. It's not arbitrary, right? And it's not random. We're being put in this position. We're not. It may be true that there are not solutions here. And Marshall Feinlevin very well might resign her position. And then we will not have police coverage at all, except for priority 1 calls from the sheriff's department. And we won't have entered it into BCSO contract. We'll just be sitting here, you know, wondering what the hell to do. I'm almost willing to let that happen and wait until November 8th, honestly, to say, go ahead, Marshall Feinlevin, resign. We'll wait till November 8th. If they give us the money, we'll hire everybody that we need to hire, and we'll start over, right? But this is it's frustrating because it feels like the situation is slightly constructed to make it impossible to keep the PD. And I do not like that. I do not like that at all. I'm finding it very frustrating. And I think that what we need to do is save the damn thing. So, I mean, that's where I'm at. And I think we can't wait. We can't wait till Tuesday. I think we need to do this on Thursday and say, Marshall Feinlevin, here's $2 million from our reserves or not.
2 million, where'd you get that?
I mean, if we've got to make it until the end of 18 months or guarantee or whatever it takes to hire people, like they're saying they're not going to hire people if there's no guarantee that their positions will last.
Right,
So,
fair enough.
So, I mean, you can't tell me both things. You can't tell me, well, I'm not going to hire someone because you can't guarantee the money. But, you know, the only way we can do this is if you can guarantee the money that we can't guarantee, that we cannot guarantee.
I would also like to know how much it would cost to contract with Boulder County Sheriffs if we had to. How much is that going to cost the town?
Far less.
In time frame.
$700,000.
How much
$700,000.
for the year? Every year?
Yeah, every year.
So 500 less.
With potential up to 6% increases per year.
Sure.
We're going to get to 1.2 million in no time with Boulder County Sheriff's Office.
Yeah,
In no
we're
time.
gonna blow past it in any event.
We'll blow past it, no problem.
What do you mean it's saying 700?
That's not 700 forever.
But
None of this is forever.
every option increases.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Like our budget's going to go up, their budget's going to go up. It's always going to go up. That's how a town has to run. Everything's going to go up all the time. We can't say it's 50 grand for 20 years. It doesn't work.
I think we, at this point, need to adjourn, and I think we need to each think about what we want to do next, and I have a feeling we may reconvene Thursday, but I want you all to think about this a bit, because we're at a bad place. In the end, as the Board of Trustees, it's on our desk.
Yeah.
It's our watch, it's our fault, and that we're here. I wouldn't put the blame anywhere else. We deferred this for a long time.
I mean, yes.
Yeah.
But you know, staff need to be more open.
Yeah.
They need to be more open. This is too cagey. I'm not saying that this is staff's fault, right? But in a volunteer elected body situation, we rely on staff. We rely on the information in the packet. When town staff say we don't need any more money for blank, why would we requisition more money for blank? That makes no sense, right? That's illogical. No board would logically ever do that. It's just not going to happen. If town staff are saying, no, we don't need it, why would we give it to them, right? We need better transparency on what town actually requires to operate and provide the services that we claim to provide. We just need it. And this is a symptom of a problem. You know, if the fear is that the board there will be backlash against, trying to put more money into this or that department, I mean, that cannot be a mitigating factor. It has to be clearly stated. And it can't wait until everyone's resigned for that to happen.
I'll agree with what Eric just said. If reasons we can't do something is for fear of what might happen, you need to cut that out as town staff.
It's not fear.
I guess I just really quickly, as part of the town staff, we too, myself, going into the budget season, and Karen Garrity is the former town administrator, we too were told the same thing. So I hear your frustration loud and clear. I also think that unfortunately we are in this circumstance because that was the narrative at the time. And so I get it, and I don't foresee that being an issue moving forward, but the people who made those statements are not here. And so, yes, we're now kind of dealing with the aftermath of not having those conversations earlier.
There was also statements that were made during that time and during budget season by former Chief Johns of DCR 217.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to need to increase your budget.
Yeah.
I remember he gave us about $500,000. That's what he said. We said, oh, we don't know if that's going to pass. And we didn't put it in the budget. Had we, she'd have her budget.
Yeah, we got to do it.
Saying we had the information from the former chief. It was just unknown at that time if the legislation of defund the police was gonna go.
Well,
And
it's not
so
just
we
that
took
term.
the gamble. Apologies. A motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Say again? You second?
Yeah.
All about?
Mayor Pro Tem Mahold,
Yes.
Trustee Baumhover,
Yes.
Trustee Corvalon,
Yes.
Trustee Coombs Absbon.
Yes.
I'll be checking back with each of you individually because that's the only way I can do it.
I just will say that I personally will go for any solution that would bring us more officers sooner than later.
fair.
That's the only solution I care about.
We're,